Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a live stream, or if you're watching this in retrospect, then just, I suppose, a regular video that hasn't been edited or cut. I'm really hoping this live stream works because I tried to do this yesterday and it randomly cut out, and I'm not sure why. But yeah, so today I wanted to talk about how Taiwan has been deporting Chinese people that have been calling for war. I want to answer some of the questions that I've been asked on Instagram, and then we'll get into the chat a little bit later. What's up, Alan? Thanks for the video and audio check. And Whoops is here. Good. I'm glad people are here to join the discussion. So yeah, yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a news article that came out talking about how Taiwan has what are the thoughts of Taiwanese people about the deportation of these Chinese people, and I thought I would go over that. What's up, Ken S? What's going on? So about a month ago, there were some spouses, a few Chinese spouses. So these are Chinese people that are married to Taiwanese people that were then deported back to China. And the reason for this was because they were calling for war. They were calling for the annexation of Taiwan through force. And there's a whole discussion behind that. A few of them were like influencers, like online influencers. And it created this like whole thing. And so this poll came out, it was done by a university, about whether or not Taiwanese people supported that. And it came out that 74% of Taiwanese people believe that China is intensifying infiltration, which means things like spying, things like infiltrating the government, different businesses and organizations, and all kinds of all different levels of Taiwanese society and government. And 71% of them supported sorry, I'm getting lost in this article. I did this so much better the first time I tried this live stream. But yeah, I'll go through this article and we'll discuss it together in the chat. But I'm surprised that number is not higher of Taiwanese people thinking that China is intensifying their infiltration because, well, one, I'm surprised that the number of Taiwanese people believing that isn't higher, but I'm surprised that the actual number of Chinese spies are not higher. Because when you think about it, when you have as much power as China has, couldn't you just like create a whole organization? I mean, they do around intelligence, and like you could totally, I don't know, I feel like with the amount of people that China has, they could completely overwhelm the government with this kind of thing here in Taiwan. So I'm surprised it's not like that much higher. But the amount that China has been intensifying these efforts has increased for sure. And that's been in the news lately in Taiwan. It's not something that people are discussing, I think, in public, but it has been in the news. 71% support requiring representatives and lawmakers to obtain government approval before engaging with Beijing, which makes sense. Basically what that means is like before anyone can deal with China in any official capacity, they need to have some kind of approval from the government before doing that. Because otherwise you run the risk of people doing business in China and making all this money and then potentially getting bribed, which also happens a lot. If you go through Taiwanese news, you do find a lot of articles talking about how different lawmakers or business people or whatever take bribes from China and they get sent to prison for it, which is pretty crazy. Goldman Rolger is in the chat. What's up, Slocum? That's how I know you've been watching a long time, when you know my nickname of Slocum. And Alex HC, what's going on, man? And yeah, so 60. Here's the point I wanted to get into originally. I'm not sure why this is in the middle of this article, but regarding the two Chinese spouses ordered to leave after they advocated for the use of military force to annex Taiwan, 67.8% of respondents said they supported the government's deportation decision. And the reason why they were deported, the reason that the government gives, is because it poses a risk to national security and social stability. And it creates this whole discussion. And I had this discussion with someone recently about whether or not it was a good idea to deport these people, because you have this idea of like free speech, you know, Taiwan is supposed to like mirror not mirror, they're supposed to be like the opposite of China. They're supposed to be a free country, a democratic country where people have the right to free speech and they have the right to say whatever they want, even if they say something like that China should invade Taiwan through force. Some people think that should be a right. You should be able to say that without consequence. But I think that this discussion is a little bit more nuanced. It's a little bit more complicated than that, right? Like freedom of speech doesn't mean you're able to say whatever you want, whenever you want. Like if you take the case of Germany, it's illegal in Germany to, I'm pretty sure anyways, to like do the Nazi salute. It's illegal in Germany to display Nazi memorabilia, things like that, for obvious reasons. And you could say, well, that's an infringement of freedom of speech, but you can understand why they have those rules in place. And in the case of Taiwan, where the threat of military force here is so high, you can totally understand why they wouldn't want Chinese people, especially Chinese influencers, saying these things, because it does pose a risk to national security, because you can start to influence the way that people look at the situation, you know? Alan has an interesting story that I'm not going to tell here, but yeah, try calling someone a bad word in a poker game. I'll leave that story for Alan to tell. Bit of a cliffhanger there. But I'm wondering what you guys think about this, because it is an interesting discussion here in the chat. Like, where are the limits of freedom of speech, and was the Taiwanese government right in deporting these people? Because it does have an effect. You might think that it's not a big deal for people to say these things, or that they should be able to say whatever they want. But I have met Taiwanese people who don't necessarily have a national identity. They're not very like, they don't hold being Taiwanese as a very important thing. Like, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine who's younger, who doesn't follow the politics very much, doesn't care about being Taiwanese, really. And she's openly admitted to saying that she wouldn't really care if she became Chinese one day. She doesn't go into how that will happen, right? Like, but the fact that she might become Chinese one day doesn't bother her at all. She just doesn't care about the situation at all. And I think it's because when you're growing up, you become so bombarded with these news articles and these I don't know, like this whole thing, right? When you grow up in Taiwan, it becomes such a huge discussion that it just kind of fatigues you and you stop really caring. And I've also met someone who openly welcomes the Chinese and doesn't see a problem with being Chinese. And her point was like, if war is inevitable, if it's going to come, I would rather surrender and preserve what I have left and just sort of become Chinese, rather than have this whole war happen and potentially lose everything, because it's simply not worth it. Because they just don't have a very strong Taiwanese identity. And it really depends on where you come from in your family background. Like if your family is Kuomintang, the KMT, or the Nationalist Party, then you have very strong. You've got a lot of Chinese culture in you, and these people will tell you that they are Chinese Taiwanese. And what that doesn't mean is, it doesn't mean that they're a part of mainland China. It doesn't mean that they're communists. What they're saying is that they are culturally Chinese, but they come from the country of Taiwan. And if that's your family background, and you don't see a Taiwanese side to it, then you can understand how over time they could start to see how becoming Chinese isn't a huge leap. People that believe this aren't widespread. It's not a common belief, but I have met people who believe that. And so you could make the argument that these Chinese influencers, these Chinese people who are advocating for the annexation of Taiwan, could potentially have an effect on the way people think of the situation. Therefore, their deportation is justified. Hello from Ohio. Nice. And Sydney, Australia. What's up? Lawai Bill. And Dan's man, no World War III, please. Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. I had a discussion with a foreigner just yesterday who's, I won't say that she's friendly to China, because I don't think that's fair to say, but she's kind of got this attitude of she'll visit any country, and she doesn't hold a lot of I don't know, beliefs as to who is in the right or the wrong. And she talked about how America is often the aggressor, which is a common Chinese talking point. You know, like people, Americans or Taiwanese or people on this side of the argument will say that it's the Chinese that are obviously the aggressor. They're the ones who are constantly threatening Taiwan. Whereas people on the Chinese side, well, it's actually the Americans who are the aggressor, because this is an internal affair and we can reunify peacefully. And if it wasn't for the Americans selling the Taiwanese weapons and doing all these things, then we could do this without any conflict, without any war. And so they're saying that it's actually the Americans that are the aggressors. And that was kind of her point. And I was like, that's an interesting take. And I think it's the only take you can, you can only have that opinion, that take, if you're living in a country, which she is. She's not living in Taiwan, she lives somewhere else, where your country isn't under threat constantly. And you're allowed to look at it, I shouldn't say allowed, but you're able to look at it from that angle, because people living here would look at that situation completely differently. But yeah, Lawai Bill's coming to Taiwan next month. That's cool. Hope you have a good time. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Maxime Bouthiet? That's a French name I've never seen before. Good morning / night from Canada. Yeah, good. I'm glad. That's kind of why I did the stream at this time, because I knew my North American friends will be just waking up right now. I tried to do this yesterday at like 4 p.m. Taiwan time, and like I had 4 people watching. I appreciate those 4 people, but I have a funny feeling that it had something to do with my internet connection and not just the time. So yeah, but I'm curious what people think in the chat about these deportations, because it was really interesting, and it sparked a bit of a debate about free speech and whether or not it was justified to do that. And this article goes in, this poll that they did, which again, I can't talk to how credible this poll is, because it doesn't say how many people participated. It just said it was done by a university. And so it's not a good representation of the way all Taiwanese people think. But I thought it was interesting nonetheless. An interesting stat that they found out was that 70.9%, so basically 80% of respondents, believe that the Chinese government is unfriendly to Taipei, while only 15.5% said it was friendly. And that's really interesting, because you would think, like, if you watch Western media, right? If you watch the news, and the only time that Taiwan really shows up in the news, really, is when there's some flare-up in tensions between Taiwan and China. And so you would assume that 100% of Taiwanese people think that there's that China is unfriendly to Taipei, but that's obviously not the case. 70% said they're unfriendly, and a 15% said they weren't. And this is where you get this split, this nuance, this complication. Dongsheng Di says the importance of unity among all parties in Taiwan to protect the nation and its democratic values. Yeah, but you're not, see, but that's again, that's what I'm about to talk about here, is this nuance, because you have this split between the two major political parties and how you grew up, I guess, your family history. You have families who are blue, okay? So the two political parties can be represented by colors. There's blue and green. The blue is the nationalists. They have a bunch of different names. The KMT, the Kuomintang, the nationalists, whatever. They were the party that left China after the Civil War. Those people, families of, like, descendants of that party, have a stronger connection to China. They oftentimes see themselves as Chinese. Not communists, just they're Taiwanese Chinese. And those people are a lot more willing now, in modern times, to negotiate with China, to do trade deals with China, to make money with China, to try and get Taiwan as rich as possible. And they're kind of hoping that through trade and through positive dialogue with China, they can kind of cool relations and keep things kind of friendly. The problem with that is that you run the risk of China infiltrating Taiwan on a deeper level, on a social level, an economic level, and then you get this slow switch to where you have more and more people believing that becoming Chinese isn't such a bad thing because they're making so much money. And those are the people who probably responded that Taiwan, those are the people that probably responded believing that China is actually a friendly country. And then you have people who are the Green Party. The Green Party are the DPP party, the people who believe in more independence, who lean more towards Taiwanese society, not Taiwanese society, but Taiwanese independence, freedom. They see themselves as more Taiwanese rather than Chinese. Some might still say that they have Chinese culture and values, but they are Taiwanese fundamentally. And those are the people who will say that China is unfriendly to Taiwan. Scramble Gulf says Americans feel strongly about protecting democracy and would defend Taiwan. And from an economic point, it is in America's interest to help Taiwan. That's a tough one. I don't know if that's necessarily true that Americans feel strongly, because it's like, do all Americans feel that way, right? Especially now with this whole protectionalist, is that how you say that? Like America first, this kind of idea where they want to pull back from the world. They kind of want less American intervention in the world. Because Donald Trump's point is that if you're going to benefit from the protection of America, you have to pay for it. Now, you could make the argument that Taiwan is paying for it with the purchasing of all these weapons that they're getting from the States, right? They are paying for the protection, so to speak. That's his argument against Ukraine, where they sent Ukraine, I don't know how many billions of dollars. That number is up for debate. Some people say one number, some say another. And Trump's thing is like, well, how are you going to pay that back? And there's a lot of Republicans who think that it isn't worth it to come to the defense of Taiwan. How are you going to convince the American people that it's a good idea to send American troops should that happen? I hope they do. It would give Taiwan a much better chance in the unfortunate and hopefully unlikely event of war. But I don't know that it's true that Americans feel strongly about protecting democracy. I think that's a really, it's a very hopeful way of looking at things. And I think Taiwanese people would appreciate that sentiment, but I just don't know how true it is. Kenneth says, I guess there's a divide between Ben Shenren and Wai Shenren. And yeah, there's a huge divide. And there has been historically, right? So for people who don't speak Chinese, Ben Shenren are local Taiwanese people who were living in Taiwan before the Civil War. And then there's Wai Shenren, who are families of the Kuomintang who came here after the Civil War. And they didn't really, Wai Shenren didn't have a very good reputation in Taiwan when they came here. They were kind of seen as holier than thou. They kind of repressed Taiwanese culture. They repressed the Taiwanese language. They lived in better houses. They were the ones that made all the money. They were the ones who were able to open up all the businesses. Now they're trying to sort of equalize the two sides. But the two, depending on which one your family comes from, the way that you look at Taiwan is going to be very different. I think that the Western people, Western media has this kind of oversimplified way of looking at it where they think that Taiwan is super unified on this, and they're not. And that's kind of what this article is going into. Wai Guo Bill says the world economy relies on Taiwan microchips. The global economy would collapse if no microchips. Money dictates the interest of all countries. And yeah, that's true. I mean, that's a little bit more of a cynical way of looking at it, where money dictates the interest of all worlds. And there's truth to that. And what would happen if the supply of microchips stopped from Taiwan? I think it would certainly, it would mess up the economy in a big way, and it would take years off the development of microchips, because it would take certain countries, Korea, Japan, the States, wherever, so long to catch up with Taiwan, because only the Taiwanese can make microprocessors the way that they do. Not this. no other country, there's no other fabs around the world who can make microchips the way the Taiwanese do. And so if you were to try and replicate that, it would take years. And so that's kind of the problem with going to war with China, is that how are they going to be able to protect the fabs? You know, like, I just don't understand how you're going to do a full scale of invasion while capturing these fabs unprotected. Let's see. Because of politics, the history of my parents learned is different from mine, and many important events and facts were left out or barely mentioned. And yeah, so that's another divide as well, is there's a generational divide between younger Taiwanese people and older Taiwanese people as well. So Dr. Lesser, Mike Doctor, I'm not sure how to say your name, has a Chinese comment that says, 台湾是真的宝岛，无拦路 Jesus, that's hard to read. 展龙爱护台湾，用心打拼鼓掌的自由跟民主 ，Prozi 胸派的真用心，支持台湾人的声音。So he's saying that Taiwan is an island of, I don't know, treasures. Bao Dao is like a treasure island, I guess. Regardless of blue or green, we really love Taiwan, and they value democracy and freedom, and he supports the voice of Taiwanese people. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people in the West, this is what shocks me too, the more I talk to people. I think most Taiwanese people support democracy and freedom, obviously, but then there's some people who really don't. But he does, so much appreciated. Scramble Golf, yeah, the USA would have to get behind Taiwan, especially from China. And he also doesn't do it in the name of democracy, not money. That's how it's always portrayed. I mean, yeah, that's like the reality of the situation, right? Like, it would be nice to say that America would get involved because they have similar political ideas, but at the end of the day, it is going to be money, you know, or some geopolitical situation, like Americans, you know, the United States wouldn't want China to gain a hold, you know, because there's this kind of chain of islands that the Americans control, and Taiwan is a part of that. And if China were to get a hold of that, then they have access to more, you know, geopolitically. So there's a lot of reasons, but yeah, I know what you mean. Mike Hunter is bold. What's up? Did you go to Kaohsiung today for the Rebel Gathering? I did not. I didn't even know there was a Rebel Gathering. I wish I did, but no, I had planned this live stream. I was supposed to do this live stream a few days ago, and I wasn't able to because some friends of mine were visiting Taiwan, so I never got the chance. But that does sound fun. I don't know. The Rebel really is not a comfortable bike for long riding, so going all the way to Kaohsiung would be a giant, excuse me, a pain in the ass. Sean Rice, wow, first time in a year I've caught you live. Yeah, I don't do these live streams that often. Maybe like I did one a month ago, and it was really fun, so I want to do more. China number one, says someone. Leg. Yeah. So yeah. So again, this article. 84.5% of respondents disagreed with the one country, two systems proposal to deal with cross-strait relations. Another 82.5% rejected China's claim that Taiwan is a part of China and has never been a country. So that's a pretty overwhelming result. Also, Double A here says no reply to me. I did reply to you. You said China number one. Interesting take. I disagree. Tell me why you think that China is number one. You're wrong. You feel free to explain your thoughts. So yeah, Ken S says you're great at live streams, good audience interaction as well as speaking. Cheers. Yeah, I'm trying to juggle my talking point while speaking with you guys. So yeah, so the one country, two systems proposal was a proposal initially thought up of the Chinese government for Hong Kong, because in 1990, when was that, 6 or 97, Hong Kong was handed over to China. But they wanted this system, actually, was it thought up by the British or the Chinese? I don't remember. But anyways, the system is like, you know, Hong Kong is now a part of China, but we're going to have two ways of doing things, because Hong Kongese people were used to a more democratic way of doing things. And so China said, okay, look, you're going to be back under Chinese control, under the PRC, but you'll still be able to vote. And so they tried this, but over the years, Hong Kongese people were realizing this just wasn't working, because they realized that they were only able to vote by people that Beijing would put in there or would approve of. And so they were like, well, this isn't really democratic if we're only able to vote for people who've been pre-approved by Beijing. So this whole system doesn't work. And then, of course, you had protests in 2008, and then again, and I mean, a lot in future years. And now Hong Kong is a completely different place. I've met a few people who have left Hong Kong since like 2019. And what they tell me is pretty sad. The Hong Kong I remember is gone. I used to go to Hong Kong a lot because I used to live in Huizhou, which is only a few hours away. And Hong Kong was a really cool place. There's a lot going on in Hong Kong. But now, lately, like, if you want to look at it on a local level, you have, let's say, a really interesting street where you have all kinds of different shops that have been open for 20, 30, 40 years, right? Maybe you have like a watch repair shop that's been there for decades. And then the next door, you've got a textile shop, and the next door, all of that is closed. The whole street, all the shops have just been closed down, and like the local economy has just been obliterated. And you also have more influence of Chinese people, more influence of Chinese culture on younger people in Hong Kong. So you've got a lot more younger people in Hong Kong speaking Mandarin Chinese rather than Cantonese. And you see this erosion of the Hong Kong identity, which is really rather sad. And so before the takeover happened, the Chinese government said openly, they sent a message to the Taiwanese, and they said, look at the system and see how it works out. Just observe, and they offer this system to the Taiwanese. Maybe you guys can also have this one country, two systems thing where you can keep your little stupid democracy, but but then you'll be a part of the PRC. And so all of these protests and all of these things happened in Hong Kong, and Taiwanese people did look, and they were like, nah, I don't think so. That system will not fly with us. It's stupid. And then so you have this result where 84.5% of respondents disagreed with the one country, two systems proposal. And of course they would, because it didn't work in Hong Kong. Hong Kong now is just Shenzhen 2.0. Which is horrible. By the way, yesterday, my stream cut out at around 28 minutes. So if it does cut out, it wasn't me. It's just YouTube doing YouTube stuff. I don't know what happened there. Oh, I did send you the message on IG. Not sure if you got them. By the way, I have also sent you the fog lamp setup. Maybe you should get them set up. Oh, right, for the bike. Yeah, I did get that right. Okay, 1997. Thank you for Irene, Dean, and Charles for telling me what year it was. I couldn't remember if it was 96 or 97. It was 97. One country, two systems for at least 50 years. A hilarious joke. And yeah, it is a complete joke. It is a complete joke. Like, Hong Kong is not the same as it was. It's sad, but that one country, two systems things did not work. Because like Hong Kongese people, like, they're not stupid, right? They saw the way what was happening. And unfortunately, the protests did not end in, I think, in a way that Hong Kongese people wanted. And in fact, one of the people that I met, one of these people who were Hong Kongese that left, was a police officer. And he left because he saw the way that they were being sort of forced to deal with the protests. So it's really rather sad. Trevor Grace is an American living in Kaohsiung on the gold card. Oh, hello. Moneybags over here. Been here 2 years now. I have a heavy bike if you want to ride in the future. And yeah, sure, that'd be great. You come here. I don't want to ride to Kaohsiung on a Honda Rebel. It's fucking terrible. Maybe if I can make some modifications, like I could probably upgrade the seat, move the pegs a little bit more forward and lift the bars up without making it look fucking stupid, then maybe I could make it a little bit more comfortable. But the Honda Rebel is a fantastic bike for riding in the city, but long distance riding, it sucks. Okay, so this AA guy says, China has made countless contributions to human progress, and it is China that feeds the whole world. Sure, that doesn't mean that China's number one. They've made lots of contributions, but I would also disagree with the contributions. I think what China is really good at, to give them credit, is stealing ideas that have from other countries, other people, other organizations, and just kind of improving on that. So if you look at like Xiaomi, for example, this giant, this Chinese giant of a company, Xiaomi, they honestly make good products. But all of these ideas that they have just been stolen from other places, and they make the same products just ridiculously cheap. So they're not like innovating. They're not contributing to the world in any newer sense. A lot of the things that they do is just simply stolen ideas, often through intelligence, like through just stealing shit from different governments and businesses, and then trying to improve on that. So if you want to consider that a contribution to the human progress, that's great. And China that feeds the whole world, and I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Yes, there are a lot of like fruits and certain things that come from China. Like if you look at a lot of, like I said, fruits, oftentimes those come from China, but they don't feed the whole world. It's not like I mean, they feed the whole world full of fentanyl. Thank you for that, China. But yeah. Flash Cloud, I like Prosy too much to argue with him. You can argue with me. I don't hate this guy just because we have different opinions. I just don't really, I find it interesting how I don't know. There's a lot of like communist, I shouldn't say communist, but like Chinese talking points that you can regurgitate, but it just doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't really land with me. Just curious on your view, how has the sentiment changed since the trade war started, and has it pushed people more in favor of China? And that's a question from Scramble Golf. It's also a question from my Instagram, which I wanted to get into because I did ask on Instagram for you guys to ask me some questions just in case we needed some things to talk about. And that was one of the questions. And I just want to find really quickly, to give credit where credit is due, who asked that question. But another person who asked this question also was my buddy C-Milk, who asked me, like, I think he asked like what the vibe is here in Taiwan since the trade war. And it was Elena Blair, my old friend. She's been watching for years. How do Taiwanese feel about everything that's been happening with the trade war? So she asked that question too. So we'll get into that a little bit. I'm falling behind with the chat, but I wanted to talk about this because I've had a few people ask me this. How do Taiwanese people feel about the trade war and everything that goes on along with that? Honest to God, anecdotally, just no one talks about it. I haven't heard any Taiwanese people talk about it. Most of the news that I see on the TV and just like from Taiwan news, a lot of it is focused on the trade, on the stock market. So a lot of Taiwanese people are watching that. They're watching it go up and down with great interest, but they're not really too concerned. Anecdotally, just from my experience, I'm not representing what Taiwanese people think. I'm sure some people might. If you're Taiwanese, you can tell me in the comments in the chat. But just for me, I haven't heard anyone really focus on the actual like trade war itself and what kind of effects that would have on Taiwan. There's no mass panic. There's not like a whole bunch of discussions happening in cafes about it. No one really talks about it. In fact, I made a video about a month ago asking Taiwanese people what they think of Donald Trump, and that include the trade war and then all of the policies that he's put in place in relationship to Taiwan and China. Most of them had nothing to say. Now, why don't they have anything to say? Well, some of it is because you probably don't want to have you don't want your political opinions online. Some random white guy comes up with a microphone and a camera and asks you this ridiculously sensitive question. I can understand why they wouldn't have anything to say, but most of them just simply like didn't follow the situation and for their like, I don't know. There was one girl who had a good answer, but yeah, I ended up having to take that video down because I had someone who I interviewed request that I blurred his face, and at that point I was like, I didn't do a very good job with that video. It was my fault. I just didn't. I should have done a better job. Ken S has a super chat. Thank you. Are those Australian dollars? Shout out to Sea Milk. That's how I found you, Prazi. All right, cool. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. How do I like this? There we go. Thank you so much. And you're also, I noticed, because Ken S has the badge next to his name, he's a channel member, so he's supporting me there too. Ken, camping with Sea Milk video was hilarious. Jesus, yeah, that was a lifetime ago. My God, we went camping in Guangxi or Guangdong? Guangdong, and I fell off the mountain. We went camping on this, like, fuck me, that was so stupid. If I have time later, I'll tell that story. It was very funny. And so, yeah, so what do people think here? Like nothing. There's not like mass panic. It's not like, again, another video I made is about how Taiwanese people only care about food. And like, that's really what it is. The trade war, as boring as that is, isn't making people really panic here. And again, because Taiwanese people have ridden this wave of like hills and valleys and ups and downs with different tension levels with China, they just don't, it doesn't affect them in a big way. Whereas I think a lot of people in the West are just now sort of tuning into the situation. And so it's new for them. And so they think that something's bound to happen. And that just isn't really the case with Taiwan. We'll get into it a little bit more if I have the chance. I want to keep up with this chat. But good question, Scramble Golf. Thank you for that. Okay, Irene Diaz, a lot of pinky everywhere to make the words against Taiwan. Yeah, there's quite a those in the chat. Sean Rice, Hong Kong was built as a finance capital, but when the money isn't safe from plunder, the money finds safer shores. And yeah, and that's what happened. A lot of the money left Hong Kong. We can remember 1997 very easily in Cantonese because 97 is 2 of the worst profanities. Yeah, I don't speak any Cantonese, but that's cool. Keep an eye on AA, and Scramble Golf says Tang Pen. Yep. Okay, here comes AA again. China is the greatest country in the world, and Hong Kong developed much better than before. That's not true. How could you say that? Jesus, before 97, Hong Kong was miles ahead of China. Any Chinese city, with the exception of maybe Shanghai. That is just not true. I don't understand. I wonder how old you are. Because I suppose if you're young and you weren't alive back then, you didn't get to see what an absolute behemoth Hong Kong was. Like someone said, Dean Little said before when Hong Kong, I believe that was him. Oh, no, sorry, it was Sean Rice who said that it was built as a finance capital, and it was an absolute financial behemoth. So to say that Hong Kong has developed much better than before simply isn't true. Since 97, Hong Kong has gone down, and now you have Chinese cities who have since surpassed Hong Kong. I just don't understand that point. China is a net importer of food as well as feed for livestock, says Sean. Chinese culture has changed with Mao, therefore not Chinese anymore. Only Taiwan has true Chinese culture. Comment, says Lawai Bill. I used to think that as well, but I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think you're right that it did change with Mao, but I don't know that Taiwan is true Chinese culture because so many people in Taiwan are trying to get away from that to try and develop their own culture, to try and develop their own set of values in society. I know what you mean because Taiwan never went through a cultural revolution and in fact went the opposite way and tried to promote Chinese values and all that kind of thing while China was going through the cultural revolution. I just don't know if it's like the real China. It's up for debate. And lately, to China's credit, they have been trying really hard to regain some of that culture. And it's one of the very few instances where the Chinese government will openly admit that they made a mistake, that the Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward were huge mistakes, actually. Sorry, I know I'm falling behind here. I'm trying to get through this as quickly as I can. This will be like quick fire questions, even though these questions warrant a much longer response. Trevor Gray says, I read an SYM TL500, more comfortable for me, but I was debating getting the Rebel. Yeah, I didn't want to get the SYM because I was worried about quality, but a fine looking bike. I'm curious to see what it's like. F. Lin, Mike the Hunter is Bold, says you can modify the seat. There is a shop in Taichung which makes pretty good job and doesn't cost much. Yeah, no, I went to a shop and upgraded my S-Max, my scooter seat, and it was okay. Hey, Gobain, my good buddy. I just heard one of my Hong Kong friends told me that his kid in elementary school should have a re-education camp in China every year. That is insane. If that's true, that's crazy. That's worth making a video. I might tell Seemuk about that because he likes to make videos about that. Jesus, like Hong Kongese kids having to go to China for re-education. That's crazy. Ken S says, I agree with Lau I Bill. Taiwan is the true China. Young Chinese from China are different. Again, like I said earlier, it depends on how you want to look at it. Do you want to see Taiwan as its own independent country, or do you want to see Taiwan as the true China? That's up for, I suppose, that's up to Taiwanese people on how they want to see that. Jeju Den says they deported them back to West Taiwan. Yeah, they sure did. Back to where they belong. Yeah. Okay, Double A says you didn't block or mute me like other streamers just because we have different opinions. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it's okay to have a different opinion, like provided you're not openly calling for the destruction of Taiwan or war, like, you know, which is what these Chinese nationalists were doing, and that's why they got deported. So I suppose if that were to happen in my stream, I suppose you would get deported out of my stream. Excuse me, but yeah. Okay, Irene Diaz, when China supposed to open the market, they just put a lot of barriers and difficulties for other countries, competitors to be in China and dumping goods. And their dumping goods ruined or killed other countries' businesses. When China's supposed to open the market. Okay. Sorry, I just got a super chat, Irene. I will try and pick that apart in a second. I'm having a hard time understanding what you wrote. Sean Rice, $10. Thank you, Sean. Keeping the stream going. I really appreciate you. Good to see you live. Good to see you live after so long. Taiwan seems to agree with you, Prozzy. I hope you are well there. And I am, and I really appreciate your support. It means a lot. Taiwan is a very easy place to feel like home. It's great. I really, really like it. Chinese people are usually very welcoming. So I like it. Okay, the argument about who has the real Chinese culture post-Mao, forget that it's also post-Chiang Kai-shek. And anyway, ignore that the culture is never monolithic nor static. And good point, yeah, it's constantly moving and changing and going in different directions. And it's not like Chiang Kai-shek was a saint. He was like almost as bad as Mao. I mean, he didn't kill tens of millions of people or whatever, but still, it was still like a one-party dictatorship for a very long time here in Taiwan. Completely off topic, did you get a new crib? It looks nice. No, I've been living here for about a year and a half. I like it. And yeah, that's how I found Prozzy too. Yeah, a lot of people found me through Seemuk and Winston back in the day. And I'm glad you guys are still with me. I'm so glad I still have like so much of my original audience. It's so cool. But yeah, Seemuk and Winston are cool as fuck. Get a lot of time for them. Trevor Gray says, I put almost 15,000 kilometers on the bike in a year and a half, and it's held up great, and I drive it pretty hard. That's cool. Speaking of which, thank you for reminding me. I got to get an oil change on my Rebel really soon. I feel as though Taiwan was the true China, but now it's just its own unique place, which is better than the true China way of thinking. Okay. Place which is better than the true China. I mean, yeah, like then it also sparks the argument of like, is there one China? Is there two Chinas? You know, and then what does the one China mean? That's also in this article. We'll get into that later. Ken S, $10 Australian. Geez, you guys are spoiling me right now. I thank you so much for this. The super chats are flying today. This is crazy. As a Japanese, oh, you're Japanese, cool. I feel that we had a good impact on Taiwan and helped it from becoming the true China to and helped it from becoming the true China and becoming its own unique place that has most of the best of China, Japan, and Taiwan. And you've got 2 upvotes for that. So you got 2 likes. So yeah, that's a point a lot of Taiwanese people discuss, debate, sometimes agree with. Like, was the Japanese colony a good thing or a bad thing for Taiwan? And I suppose the answer can't really be yes or no, right? Because it's going to be, it depends on what you're talking about. Like if you look at it from a infrastructure basis, then you would say it's good because they built railroads, they helped develop Taiwan. You can still see lots of Japanese influence here. And then there's some more negatives as well. But yeah, I would say that Japan had a pretty good effect. I mean, as far as like colonies go, right? Like it can go really bad really easily. And so, you know, save for how they treated the Aboriginals, I would say that Japan probably had a good influence. Marian Huang has a 750 NT super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You didn't post the question. You have a super sticker, which is cool. I've never seen that one, but I appreciate your support. Thank you guys so much for these super chats. This is crazy. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be able to eat. Phil, $2. Dynasty Dudes for Life. Holy F. Phil has been watching for a very long time, if he remembers the Dynasty Dudes. The Dynasty Dudes was like a really stupid idea for, I can't remember if it was a video series or what it was that I had with Simo. I think it was like a joint channel we were going to do, or maybe a podcast we're going to call the Dynasty Dudes, which is a name I came up with, and it was so catchy, and it was such a stupid name, and I really ran with it for a while. Phil, thank you so much. I'm so impressed that you remember that. That's like deep prosy lore. I can't believe people remember that. It's so cool that so many people are still here from back in the day, because so much of my audience now is Taiwanese, and so a lot of the comments are written in Chinese, and it kind of gets lost. You know, a lot of my original audience gets lost in that, and that's why I really love these live streams, because it feels like a blast to the past, which is great. Where am I? Saw the title, yeah, bro. Indonesia here, cool. What up, Indonesia? Chinese glue, get out of Indonesia. What does that mean? Check the Honda CL500, same engine as the Rebel, but more comfortable. Cheers from Budapest. Yeah, I've seen those around. Those are kind of cool. I don't know if I like the exhaust. I like the exhaust placement. I think those are cool, like the Triumph Scrambler, where the exhaust comes like way up. I like the way that looks, but I think the Rebel looks better. I know they look very similar, but I think the Rebel looks better. But it is an interesting bike, and probably is a lot more comfortable for long distances. When do you move into Kaohsiung, says Dutch Universe? I don't know. I'm very lazy. Like, I complain about Taichung a lot, but I have to give it to Taichung. It is a very... Why is my camera having such a hard time focusing on me? That's really annoying. I apologize. It is just so easy to live here, and to move in Taiwan is it's not that hard. I hate moving house. It's so annoying. And honestly, like, the differences between Kaohsiung and Taichung are there, but I don't know if they're enough for me to warrant going there. And it is so hot in Kaohsiung. Okay, you should collab with M13 for motovlogs. Yeah, he doesn't like me. We tried when I first moved to Taiwan, and I think I'm not sure what happened. He doesn't like me very much. The funny thing is that Taiwan has a lot of technical barriers and non-tariff barriers to Japanese cars. And if Taiwan and Japan were friendly, Taiwan wouldn't have banned right-hand drive models long ago. Yeah, I mean, that's true for a lot of things. Like, if you're trying to buy a Japanese car in Taiwan, they are so expensive. If you're trying to buy a car in general in Taiwan, it's so expensive. Even my motorcycle, which is Honda, which I don't think is built in Japan. I think it's built in like Thailand or something. They cost so much more. Like, I went to Japan, and my bike costs half as much as in Japan. So the import taxes on vehicles in Taiwan are insane. If you want to ride a motorcycle or drive a car in Taiwan, you better have the bank. You have to really want to do it. So yeah, and I wonder like why. I wonder if that's been brought up, by the way. You know, because Trump did put, what was it, 25% tariffs on Taiwanese goods. And I'd be interested to see how much tariffs Taiwan had on American goods before Trump did that. Like, was it even justified? I know that Trump excluded microchips from these tariffs. So I wonder like what the tariffs actually were on American goods coming into Taiwan. Because like with automobiles, motorcycles, that kind of thing, it's just so fucking expensive. It makes me want to go to Japan, honestly, because of how cheap their cars here. Leslie Chung says, I think younger generation do accept Chinese culture. They have, but don't really think they're Chinese. Yeah, and again, so I think I said this in the last live stream, but there's a problem with saying Chinese in English because it's not nuanced enough. The English language isn't nuanced enough to explain what people mean when they say that they're Chinese Taiwanese. Because in Chinese, you have a lot of different words for Chinese. Like, are you talking about the culture, the country, the government, the what? In Chinese, they have different words for these things. And so when you say it in English, it sounds like they're saying that they're Chinese when that's not what they're saying. They're talking about the culture. But yeah, there is quite a big divide between generations here in Taiwan. All foreign cars are expensive in Taiwan due to taxes. So, but are the taxes the tariffs, or is that a different thing? Dutch Universe, I think you could try to talk to M13 because I remember he said he tried to messaging you, but is also under the impression that you don't like him. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That was years ago. And just like something happened where I said, yeah, we'll meet up for beers and we can talk about doing videos together. And he was like, no, I want to do business. I don't want to go for beers. And I was like, okay, I don't know. I'm not going to like shit talk the guy. I'm not going to say anything bad about him. I don't have anything bad to say about him. I haven't talked to him for years, but that's okay. That's fine. Oh, God. Nitya the Fort. Japan had a strong cultural impact on Taiwan. Taiwanese people are very polite and organized compared to mainland people. For example, when waiting for the MRT, people wait in line. I wonder how much of that is due to the Japanese influence and just how much of that is due to the lack of a cultural revolution. Because I think that Chinese people before the Cultural Revolution were also rather quiet and polite and considerate to other people, but then all of that kind of went out the window after the Chinese Cultural Revolution, which never happened in Taiwan. And they retained their Chinese influence, their Chinese culture here in Taiwan. So was it a Japanese influence or was it just the lack of the Chinese? I don't know. It's interesting. And I've been thinking about that for a long time. I've got books that I've been reading to try and get to the bottom of that. God, hey, Tokyo Sam, my guy. Poppy's in the chat. Did somebody say Japan? Yeah, the one guy you got to watch if you're interested in anything Japan. You got to watch my boy, Tokyo Sam. God, I had such a fun time with him when I was in Tokyo. Guy's a menace. Irene says the Taiwanese duty and tax system is way too crazy, and it is. It's insane. It makes everything so expensive here. Ken S is a fan of Tokyo Sam. So cool to have him in the chat. God, wow. Irene Diaz has like the facts on import tax. I can't even read this because I don't even know what any of it means. CIF, 17.5% import tax, 25 to 30% commodity tax, 5% VAT, 10% luxury tax. Jesus, that seems like a bit much. But then again, I'm dumb, so maybe that's normal. Tokyo San says, I have come to the chat to remind all of you that Prozzy is, in fact, if not slightly, he is very attractive. Thank you, Sam. Much appreciated. Yo, Sam, been a fan of you for a long time, bro. What's up? Me and Sam have a lot of mutual fans, a lot of mutual friends. I often meet people who are very excited when I tell them that I know Sam and have worked with him before on various videos. Sam's got a lot of fans. The one thing about Sam is he's incredibly consistent. Like, he's been making content for so long and he doesn't stop. And he never switches up things. Like, he never has to like apologize for the way he said something or something. He's just like so consistent. And I think that's why people like him so much. Taiwan's combined import vehicle tax rate is 76%. What the F? I guess that makes, I can kind of understand it when you consider just how, sorry, I just looked down into my microphone. I hope people who are wearing headphones didn't just have their ears exploded. I can kind of understand that when you look at how small Taiwan is and how overwhelmed the roads could be with scooters, motorcycles, and cars. And so they kind of have to raise the tax because they know people are going to buy cars anyway. So why not bump up the tax? But it just makes it so ridiculous to own a car here. There was an intense conflict when the Kuomintang retreated to Taiwan. There was indeed huge cultural difference before. And that's true. That was from Li Yu. If you you can watch, there's a video on YouTube. I can't remember what it's called. God, my mouth is getting so dry from talking so much. But there's a really interesting video on YouTube interviewing Taiwanese people who were living in Taiwan, and then the Kuomintang came. They came off their ships after the Civil War, and they talked about their first impressions of these Chinese people, these Kuomintang who were getting off the boats, because for 50 years prior, was it 50 or 40 years? 50 years prior, Japan had controlled Taiwan. And they were very much like Japanese. They read Japanese. They spoke Japanese. They wore Japanese clothes. They lived in Japanese houses. Like, it was Japan. And then suddenly these Chinese people were coming off the boats to reclaim Taiwan. And some people were rather excited to be reunited with their roots, to be Chinese again. And they were met with these these soldiers who have just been beaten to death, after this war, who were, I think they called them like blanket soldiers, because they were just coming back from fighting in the north, and so they had these winter jackets that had holes in them. These people were starving to death, and then suddenly they realized that it wasn't going to be this sort of Chinese utopia that they had hoped for. Really interesting video, really cool. I watched it, I think, a year ago or more. Tokyo Sam says, "You're my power plant." Yeah, we had a talk that was quite funny. I'm not going to go into it because it's too complicated. But yeah, Phil, I remember Sam from Victor, Give Me a Break, man, before their feud or whatever. Dutch Universe says, how about collaborating with Andrew Nerf? Andrew Nerf, yeah. I don't know, man. That guy, he has a lot to say about Taiwan, a lot of interesting viewpoints. I'd have to watch more of his content to know whether or not I agree with him or not, but he seems to be a pretty negative guy, a pretty, I don't know if a hurt guy, but yeah, I don't know what his deal is. I don't think I would have anything to gain from collaborating with him, really. Maybe I would, I don't know. Ken S. with another super chat. That Andrew Nerf guy is weird, seems high on meth. Right on cue. I don't know. I don't know if he's high on meth. He seems to be... I don't want to say too much, man, because I don't want to say, like, I don't want to start a weird YouTube feud, but yeah. Yeah. I got a lot of respect for Sam. Dude's cool and has his own personality, and that's true. Sam is his own man. He's not afraid to speak his mind. Opinions on the banking system here. I feel like I walk into a time machine every time I walk in. Yeah, the banking system here is stuck in the 80s. It sucks. Whatever your complaints are, I'm sure they're the same as mine. Asian Jaywalker. I don't see any kind of send super chat button at all. Well, if you must know, if you look down, there's the chat where you can type your messages. To the right of that, that's what I'm looking at, is your emotes. To the right of that will be your show your support for Prozzy, and I believe that will be your super chat button. Hey, I worked in Taiwan for a media company, says Canned Cherry. Really? That would be a cool job. I don't want to go back. I mean, I wouldn't mind going back to teaching, but to work for a media company would be a pretty cool change. A buddy of mine got a job as a content analyst or a content something for some company. I was like, what the hell? How do you get those jobs? I would be interested in trying that out. Maybe I would hate it. I don't know. But I've got years of experience online, so I wonder if that would be a job I can get. And I wonder if Tokyo Sam could do something like that in Japan as well. Nancy C says, to me, this sounds just like an English listening class. I usually rely on Chinese subtitles when watching videos. I even use ChatGPT to translate this sentence. I don't know if this is a good English listening opportunity, because I speak so quickly in this, because I'm trying to get through the chat, and I'm also trying to discuss the topic of the deportations of these Chinese people, and I don't think I speak very clearly. Sometimes I mumble. If I was speaking Chinese right now at this speed, there would be no way that I would be able to understand what I'm saying. But Nancy, I appreciate you being here. 谢谢. My biggest question is just asking, what everybody is thinking, which is Prozzy OnlyFans when. I think Alan opened an OnlyFans account for us, which I thought was hilarious. Like, just, it didn't work, obviously. Yeah, it would just be pictures of my feet, which no one wants to see. He thinks he's the mainlining meth, not just smoking it. Again, for anyone who's gonna like screenshot this to say that I'm shit talking Andrew Nerf, I'm not. This is purely chat. Okay, don't take what I say out of context. Would Prozzy eat raw eggs on his OnlyFans? Yeah. Again, another running live stream chat here. In fact, I was gonna do this on OBS so I can get like an overlay of having like eating a raw egg fund or something, because I love Tokyo Sam's. My buddy Sam's overlay. I just realized like what a mess my room is. I just like have my laundry in the background. Didn't even care. Just started the live stream. Ridiculous. But anyways, I love Sam's overlays. It's so cool. He's got like hilarious like his Coke addiction or something that you could super chat to. It's so funny. But I haven't got a handle on OBS yet. Iron Diaz laughs at it. And oh, Alan's still in the chat. What's up? I didn't know you were still here. This is getting clipped and reeled on his channel now. Yeah, probably. Paulo B says, I remember C-Milk's video about you buying the VW Santana. That was something funny. Yeah, good times. I miss that car. What a piece of shit, but so much personality. My buddy Marco is here. Prozzy, Sam is his own man, but is he the record man? What does that mean? I worked for this is Ken Cherry, says I worked for the NMA, the animation branch of the Apple Daily between 2010 and 2013. I don't know what that is, but cool. I guess that's the media side of things, but I don't know what NMA is. I'm really dumb, remember that. Omar Ahmed said, I think she's hitting on you. Must be missing something there. Asian Jaywalker, the internet says, look for a dollar bill icon. No, I have none of those. I see a dollar bill icon, but it's all right. Stop being so attractive. I think Sam's flirting with everybody. That's a superpower. Sam's an absolute pickup artist, to be honest. I need to be alone when I watch your videos because I'm so intimidated by your extreme alpha aura. Ah, I love Sam. Prozzy, why didn't you ever try to become an IRL Twitch streamer? I don't know. I never got into that. I always found it weird because my life isn't all that interesting, and I'd have to like force myself to go out. I have a video idea where I want to see if ChatGPT can teach me enough Chinese to where I could survive a day in Taiwan, which is kind of stupid because I can already survive a day in Taiwan with my current level. But and that would be kind of like an IRL stream, but just not streaming. I would have to like go out and force myself to go to certain places and do certain things for the video to put myself in situations where I'd actually have to use Chinese. And it's kind of working. Like I haven't actually recorded it yet. I'll probably end up doing that tomorrow or Tuesday. I've done a few lessons with ChatGPT. It's really interesting. I wanted to show you guys actually something kind of cool as well before I get back into the chat. Before I do though, Ken S, another $2 Australian super chat. Thank you so much. That's Tokyo Sam, the OG Japan YouTuber, Japanese fan here. Does that mean I owe Sam $2 Australian now because you super chatted at Tokyo Sam? But look at that, Tokyo Sam out here making me money. Much appreciated. Ken S, you were like, I think you've just paid for my dinner tonight with all these super chats. I really appreciate it. And like always, I always try to get to the super chats first, obviously. You owe me all of Australia. I won't stop at $2. Yeah, I'll have to call up the Australian leadership and sign over my rights from Australia to you. So yeah. So anyways, yeah, I wanted to show you guys this book. This book I got from my Chinese university students in well, actually I can tell you right now because they wrote me a letter. 2013, December 21st, they wrote me this. Let me just cover that up because I had my my information on it. But yeah, they wrote me this letter in the beginning, and they were my university students in 2013. So in 2013, I was 22, and I was teaching university, which is crazy. Oh, Ken asked, but $10. Eat more, bro. Fucking hell. Jesus, Ken, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you. Eat more. I should. I eat like once a day now, trying to save money. Sponsorships are in the are in the hole lately. Me and Alan are having a really rough time financially because that's a whole other live stream. Anyways, I was 22 and I was teaching university, which is hilarious because I was only like a few years older than my students, and they gave me this book, and I used it to learn Chinese. I did something called Pimsleur's, which is something Simo recommended me, because that's how he learned to get to like a basic level of Chinese. And so I did. I took a few lessons. The first lesson I did was 10 years ago, almost exactly. It was very, very simple. And I started doing a whole bunch of them. And so like I would just have like pages and days and days and days. You guys probably can't see it very clearly, but it's written in like pinyin. And it was just like vocab and different sentences and all kinds of things to get my Chinese to be at a very basic level. So like, you know, lesson 5 is 6 would be like, I learned how to say of course, which is 当然, or next to, which is 旁边, or, you know, all these kind of different things. And I just did lesson after lesson after lesson after, and this whole book is just like filled with Chinese lessons. And I decided to take it up again because I don't learn well with a teacher for some reason. I find it awkward. And so ChatGPT comes along and I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'll try again and I'll use this notebook again. And so I have. This is really funny. I made a video with my former student, not a university student. He was a Korean kid that I taught at the international school. And I just found a page with all their test scores on it. This is from, I don't have a date on it, but oh, I do. No, I don't. But yeah, that's him there, King. I got all A's, of course. So yeah, so I picked up the notebook again and Jesus, now I can't find my lesson. And then so I'm doing it again. And so the other day I did a lesson here, and I did another lesson. And I'm trying to see if ChatGPT is good enough to improve my Chinese level. And it is working, but there is some, before I continue, Rohan Y has a $60 super chat. Thank you so much. Rohan is also, you can see his little icon by his name. He is also a channel member. So Rohan Y, thank you. 谢谢. Really appreciate it. Let's celebrate their 3rd super chat on a live stream. Whoa, look at you, Rohan. Ken S must be on his like 50th or something. I wonder why isn't YouTube telling me about that? I wonder like what his is at. God, this is so annoying. I hate the way that YouTube makes me do this. I want to try and like his thing and I can't because there's stuff in the way. Anyways, it was working, but there was some issues with it. Like it would teach me, it taught me the sentence, I think we really get along. Okay. And the way that it taught me, I think it said something like, oh, 我们很说和 or something. And I was like, what? Like I've never heard anyone say 说和. I've never heard that. And I've got ChatGPT teaching me at sort of an intermediate level, which is like somewhat easy for me, but sometimes it feeds me new information that I learn. And I was like, I've never heard anyone say that before, but I should know that word. I should know that sentence. And I do know that sentence, and I've never heard anyone say that. So I go and I ask a Taiwanese friend, and they're like, yeah, that's wrong. Like it just taught me a wrong thing. And I was like, what the hell, ChatGPT? And so I went and this will all be in my video, but I called it out and I was like, is this right? Is this wrong? Like this woman, like that sounds wrong. Did you make a mistake? And it was like, oh, good catch. This is only used in like very traditional, some kind of old written way of saying it and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, God damn it. And so you can't really trust it. Why the hell was I talking about that? Why was I talking about that? I don't remember where I was going with that, but anyways, it doesn't matter. I thought it was interesting. Trevor Gray says, best way to improve your Chinese is to do odd tasks alone. For example, I did an eye test today for new glasses, and that really pushed my Chinese level, but I learned some new words. And yeah, I agree. I think like going out and actually speaking to people helps, but it's not perfect because oftentimes I find to learn a word that is used in such a specific situation that I end up forgetting the word because I never use it again. You know what I mean? You should do a Chinese vlog where you try to pick up old men and see if they are closeted and bat for the same team. I'd pay to see that. Very weird, but sure. Donate more to Prozzy. He owes me Australia. Yeah. Donate to my Australia fund. If I'm gonna find a way to get Sam Australia, I'm gonna need more money, because I don't know if you guys have ever tried to purchase the country of Australia, but it's rather expensive. Holy shit at work. I demand more Prozzy money. Love it. Nice. D-Man says, was the school that you started teaching in Taiwan the 4-letter H word? Question from the cool part of Ottawa. Barhaven. What up, buddy? I think my dad lives in Barhaven, or my sister, but I think they both do. I don't remember. Barhaven. God. I remember there was a girl I really liked in college who lived in Barhaven, and I used to drive her. I went to Algonquin College, and I used to drive her home. But I lived in fucking Orleans, so like I would drive her the wrong way. Like, I mean, I would drive her home in Barhaven, which is like not on the way to my house. Anyways, yeah, I did start working at that company, and I fucking hated it. I think I lasted like 9 months before I left and got a job at a kindergarten, because I could not stand that company. Lawai Bill says that was a really good video, and with a Korean. Interesting. Oh, cheers. So you do know what I'm talking about. Hu Xiang says what would be better? Hu Xiang says each other. Oh, he's correcting. Okay, yeah, I see. Okay, Marco says ChatGPT means generally poor teacher. Yeah, I think for like a basic level, it could work. It was a VPN issue. It removes the support button if I'm not set to location Canada. He's figured out his super chat issues. Just give me like 2 seconds. You should still be able to hear me, because I'm using my Bluetooth microphone, but my mouth is so... Where the hell? Oh, my mouth is so dry from speaking so much. I'm going to have to get a drink of water here. But yeah. I have finally caught up with the chat. Jesus Christ, I'm going a million miles an hour here. I also have to get into some Instagram questions as well, because it's not fair for me not to answer them, because people did send them in. Ty 3000 said, I thought someone reported this video and I had removed and had it removed or something for a moment. The page went back and had to reload. So strange. Oh, are we having connection issues? I hope not. That would really suck. Oh, or is it because I left? D-Man says, my university girlfriend of 3 years lived in Orleans. It was a long distance call there. Had to pay a special service 20. What? How the hell is Barhaven to Orleans a long distance call? Or maybe you live somewhere else. Yeah, I grew up in Orleans. Lawai Bill says, I found memorizing characters first with flashcards. Oh, memorizing characters first with flashcards, then speaking, the key to be learning. Yeah, I find learning how to read really hard. I'm not very good with just like rote memorization, and that's the only real way you can learn how to read Chinese, is just memorization. It's very difficult. And I am lazy. Like, I'm not going to make any excuses. It's mostly my fault. The cost of an average Australian house is the same price as a very super nice yacht. Yeah, that is staffed full time. That's true. Australia and Canada have very similar issues. Is your being sober something you want to be permanent or just temporary? I mean, and that comes from Phil. Appreciate the question. Probably permanent. I mean, I have no reason to go back to drinking. If you were to honestly and objectively weigh out the pros and cons of drinking, you know, you put the pros over here and the cons over here, like which one, you know what I mean? Which one's going to be heavier, so to speak, if that makes sense. And so I just don't have a reason to go back. Like when I was drinking, I was getting fat. I wasn't sleeping very well. I was tired. I wasn't feeling very good. I wasn't doing as much. I wasn't very optimistic. I was negative all the time. I'm still rather negative now, but not nearly as much as I was when I was drinking. I didn't have very much money. I was just like not really going anywhere. And I just don't know why I would want to go back to that. So for now, permanent until I have some random reason to drink again, you know. Asian Jailwalker, the $2 Canadian super chat. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And he's got the super sticker. Look at that. Great. Ken S, another $2. Ken S, good Lord. Dude, am I cleaning out your bank account right now? What's going on? Do more live streams, bro. It's your talent. SRS. Yeah, cheers, man. Thank you so much for saying that. I don't do these often, but it's nice to hear that you think. Nice to hear that you think I'm good at it. I really appreciate that. I'm not sure how much of like the topic I should focus. Like, I'm still trying to figure out how much I need to focus on the chat, which is like important because I want to be able to like engage with you guys, and how much I want to talk about like the actual topic of the live stream, which is like the deportation thing. Like how, like, do you know what I mean? Like, where's the balance there? Like, I feel like when there's a lull in the chat, then I go back to the topic, but there hasn't really been a lull in the chat, so. I don't want to like frustrate people by getting so off topic, but it is cool to have so much to talk about. A toonie, yeah. So you know how many people are so blown away that Canadians call their $2 coin a toonie and our $1 coin a loonie? I never thought about it growing up in Canada because to us it's so normal to call them loonies and toonies. And then you move abroad and you say it, and suddenly when you say it, when you're out of Canada, you realize just how fucking stupid it sounds. Like, cause it sounds like you're making it up. Like, I remember talking to some Australians and they were like, you call it a loony and a toonie? And I was like, yeah, like with a straight face. Like, obviously that's what we call it. It's not shocking to me. And they were like, you're making that up. Like, obviously, like, why would you, you know? And so, yeah. Yeah. D-Man says, it used to be a long distance at the time before the city amalgamated in 92 to 95. Okay, yeah. Yeah, because I guess like there was nothing in Barrhaven before before then. Like I remember Barrhaven when it started to get built up. Trevor Gray says, I learned Pinyin first and now I know like 2,000 words, but I don't know the characters. Now I need to go back and learn. I'm in the exact same position. I know Pinyin and I don't know the characters. And so now I got to go back. I've gotten Anki? What the hell is that app? But I haven't really been using it, and I should. Yeah, Anki app where you can like download flashcards and stuff, but I haven't found like a very good deck yet to use. I'm in completely the same boat as you. Phil, I think I damaged my liver and or kidneys drinking, but I do drink maybe every few months when I go to Japan. Yeah, I found Japan interesting. I find it difficult not to drink in Japan. No, it wasn't difficult. Like I just didn't drink and it was easy. But like I could see how so much of the fun, so much of like the culture, so much of like the ability to actually speak to Japanese people revolves around drinking. Very different than it is to here in Taiwan. But yeah, drinking in Japan is like a big thing there. Cavalan whiskey is awesome. Is it like I had an honest discussion with myself around whiskey and other hard liquors like that. Do they taste good, or are we just lying to ourselves? Like, can you actually take a sip of whiskey and not make a face about it? Because I could, but I'd have to kind of train myself and force myself to kind of trick myself. Like, you've got people who'd be like, ooh, I can really taste the leather, or this one's a little chocolatey, or this one's got a smoky flavor. It's like, or does it just taste like absolute garbage? You know what I mean? Which is why we mix it with things like Coke or orange juice to take the shitty taste away from it. And so I'm not making fun of Cavalan in particular. I mean, like, all whiskeys, don't they kind of taste like shit? Like, if we're having an honest discussion about the actual taste, the actual flavors, it's not that good. Prozzy, I remember the days before toonies. I remember when toonies were like coming into circulation and all my friends would gather and we would have like these hammers and we would try and take out the middle part because like the toonie's like a 2-part coin or whatever. And we tried forever smashing toonies to try and get it out. Aussies are one to speak. They have weird names for a million things. Macas, pokies, you name it. Yeah. In Australia, $50 is called a pineapple. $20 is called a lobster. No, it isn't, Bill. Stop making that up. You are lying. I hope you're lying. Vincent Yu, how do you think about Taiwan's Danonsu? Am I reading that right? Danonsu. Let me double check. Oh, Da Ba Mian. The Great Removal? What the hell is that? Oh, is that the deportation? I don't know. I'll get to that in a second. Well, there'll be more videos about Zhongzi. It's always fun to watch you try to speak Taiwanese, Chinese. Yeah, I mean, Again, this video I have. Oh yeah, that's why I brought up the book. Jesus, because I'm making the video about trying to get through a whole day speaking Chinese. I think it's an interesting video. So yeah, that video will be coming up soon. This week, I think. Like another reason I'm doing this live stream is because I didn't have a video ready for this week. Which is no excuse, because it's not like I was like overwhelmingly busy. I just kind of was struggling to find an idea. Now I've got one, which is this one. So my next video I think should be in Chinese, which is going to be so embarrassing. There's a reason I don't typically speak Chinese in my videos. But yeah, the app Tofu Learn is pretty good for characters. But do they do traditional characters? Because that's a big problem too. Is like a lot of the apps just have simplified characters, which I can read. I can read like a few hundred simplified characters, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be able to read traditional characters. Yeah, straight alcohol is probably an acquired taste. But I mean, like, why do I want to acquire the taste? Like, doesn't that mean it's just bad? You know, Marco says, I drink whiskey straight. I like the taste. Yeah, but I think you're lying. It doesn't, like either lying to yourself or you've tricked yourself into, it's just not good. I don't understand how people could think that it's good, you know? I mean, maybe you could make an argument, but I just don't think it's very good. I had to be honest with myself about that. And then I also have a discussion about like what the actual alcohol is. Like if you stripped away everything, right? Like whatever the hell is in whiskey or vodka or tequila, and you were left with just the pure alcohol, like that does not taste good. It's like, if you've ever had gaoliang or baijiu, as they call it in China, it's slightly different, but whatever. Yours makes no difference, the same thing, same flavor. It tastes almost like pure alcohol, and it's garbage. It's so bad. Rohan, why the recalling? Oh, God, yeah, I haven't been following that. I don't know. What is it? Something like they recalled the Kuomintang lawmaker or something like that? I have to read that, so I apologize. Maybe that's for another live stream. Or maybe you guys, you can tell me in the chat. I didn't keep up with that. I did see it in the news, but I didn't really read into it because it's a bit complicated. Called pineapple and lobster because of the dollar note colors. I feel like Lawai Bill is in here just spreading lies. Ken Cherry says, Australia has every major Taiwan bubble tea brand store in Sydney. I had 2-pack G-Pie in Sydney, Chinatown the other day. Oh, that's cool. I wonder how many Australians actually know that bubble tea is Taiwanese, though. Trevor Grace is hoping to get fluent one day so I don't feel like an idiot for the rest of my life here. Yeah, me too, man. I'm with you. Ken S says, I struggle to read simplified Chinese. Traditional is easier. I don't know. I found reading simplified a little bit easier. I mean, obviously it's called simplified, but yeah. I also love the story behind it, like how so much of the country of China was illiterate. And so they like strip all the complicated parts out of the language, and then suddenly the literacy rate in China like overnight explodes because they started using simplified characters. Genius. I haven't acquired the taste either. I tried some not cheap whiskey or Scotch straight, and I made a face. Yeah. And then you have to sit there like a man, right? And be like, and twirl it around and be like, oh yeah, whiskey. I'm so, like, so I understand the romantic masculine part of drinking whiskey. I do. I get it. It does feel cool. It's the same reason I ride a motorcycle or have a cigar or something. But it just doesn't, if you're honest, it just doesn't taste particularly all that good. I found simplified characters harder to memorize as they all look similar. Okay, I can see that. That's interesting. Probably the first time I had whiskey was when I was 13. I've been drinking alcohol since I was about 4. I tried it out and just liked it. I love whiskey. My first experience was Crown Royal. No lie. Look at that. Pure Canadian. 4 is pretty early. I mean, I remember growing up and my parents giving me like a sip of beer or something, you know, like as parents do in the 90s, like you get a sip of their beer and it usually tastes like shit because you're a kid, and then they tell you to remember that flavor when you're older so that you don't drink or whatever. But yeah, honestly, it depends on the whiskey. I don't know. I found like you have to drink a shitload of whiskey I think, to get the tongue, the taste for the differences. You know what I mean? And by that time, like, you've tricked your brain into thinking it's good, I think. Because to me, I was like, I don't give a shit what whiskey is. It all tastes the same to me. I don't get it. Oh man, it went away. I just wanted to quickly answer some Instagram questions before I dive back into the chat. I feel bad that they asked me these questions a few days ago and I haven't had the chance to, like, whoops, that's the wrong one. I haven't had the chance to answer some of them. So just really quickly. Oh boy. Okay. John Flyer says he wants me to talk about Taiwan's awful road system. And I don't think there's that much to talk about. I actually think the road system's quite good. I'm often shocked. No, let me take that back. I think, like, the road maintenance is quite good. I'm shocked at how quickly they can get it done. I remember I was in Taipei. And I was watching these guys repave this road, and, like, I could not believe how fast they were going. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Like, these huge machines just racing up and down the road, repaving it. It was insane. But yeah, I guess some of the planning, some of the urban planning isn't really the best here. And it does suck. And sometimes roads, like, or like lanes will just end randomly. Ken S, another $5 Australian. Jesus, thank you so much. The problem with simplified is that they remove some key particles, which makes it more difficult. Yeah, I suppose if that's the case, then knowing the particles would be a good way of learning how to read first rather than just memorization. I mean, there's still memorization, but, like, I wonder, like, what the key is to unlock learning traditional characters. Because for now, I'm just trying to remember different characters that are commonly seen. But if you're able to, like, put a character together, that would be cool. Yeah, Taiwan's awful world system. I don't know. I sort of feel like that's beating a dead horse at this point because I've spoken about it so much. But yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily the roads that are the issues. It's often the driving. But yeah. So I already answered this person, the whole how do Taiwanese people feel about the trade war. Marco's actually, I think he's pretty well tapped into the way people think. I'm wondering what he thinks, because my answer, I think, wasn't very satisfying, because someone asked me how Taiwanese people think about the trade war that's going on between the States and China. And my friends, I said anecdotally, don't talk about it. And that was earlier on the stream when I think I had less people. So I'm wondering how you guys think about the trade war and whether or not you have Taiwanese friends that discuss it. Because my Taiwanese friends don't seem to discuss it. Yesterday I was out to dinner, and it didn't even come up in conversation once. Not once. It was all about food. Because again, like, it's all Taiwanese people care about. And it does seem like Taiwanese people, their eyes are on the stock market more than anything, not so much like the political repercussions of the trade war. It seems to be more in the actual economic repercussions. And so their eyes are very heavily focused on the stock market instead. Ken S again says, learn the basic particles. For example, if you can learn things like grass or animal, or figure out a lot of the new characters, bro. Okay. I wonder if on my Anki app I can do that, if I can, like, learn the very, very basic ones, and then you're able to, like, put the characters together to figure that out. Sorry, let me blow through these Instagram questions really quickly. Stiao says, cost analysis of making your own food in Taiwan versus eating out every day. Yeah, I mean, that really depends on what it is you're planning on eating. I used to cook at home a lot, and it was crazy expensive. Like, if let's say, for example, I wanted to make a bolognese, right? Classic pasta dish. I would have to go to, like, Carrefour or a grocery store because I need to buy wine to make the sauce. Then you get a ground beef. You're not always going to find ground beef. If you do find ground beef, it's going to be kind of expensive, and you're not really going to get very much of it. You got to buy stock. You got to buy the pasta. You got to buy veg, so like onions, carrots. I used to put sometimes celery in it, I think, just to get that basic. I can't remember my recipe now. It's been so long. But anyways, all of this would cost like a few $1,000s, you know. And sure, you could make enough pasta. You could freeze the sauce. You could make enough for a few days. Or I can go to my local Italian restaurant and have a pretty decent pasta dish for like $150 here at the night market. Is it going to be as good as how I made it? Of course not. It's going to taste like, you know, it would make an Italian throw up probably if they ever had to see it. But it's significantly cheaper to eat out. And so I can't really run down a full cost analysis because it really depends on what it is you're eating. But it can cost, like, in some cases, thousands less to eat out. And that's why so many people do. I hope that was a satisfying answer. I'm not sure. Vivian Chen says you. That chest hair, that's from my buddy Josh, who runs a tattoo shop here. When are you moving to Kaohsiung? I think that person was in the chat earlier. I talked about moving to Kaohsiung earlier in the chat. Don't really want to do it. I mean, I want to. I just such a pain in the ass, and it's so hot, and I'm so comfortable here. I have no real reason to leave. So yeah, deportation needs whiskey to celebrate. Yeah. And then also, yeah, I didn't finish going over this article. I wonder like how many people are actually interested. Nah, fuck that article. It's pretty much over. I pretty much went through all of it, I think. But yeah, that was kind of the main point of the live stream, was like whether or not people agree that those Chinese people should have been deported or not. I wonder how, like, see, I don't think people care. Like, I thought the article that I read got quite a bit of attention, and so I thought it'd be interesting to do a live stream about it, and no one's really talking about it. It seems like a lot more people are focused on the trade war, which is like, that makes sense. That's stupid of me to focus on something like that. That's not the trade war. I should have like read up more about it, or the recall vote. Because I was hoping to have something in the chat about it, but that's okay. Taipei has good cycling infrastructure. New Taipei isn't that good, or it wasn't when I was living there. That was from Darkhaven. Yeah, I don't cycle very much because it's so bloody hot, but I have seen cycling in Taipei to be quite good. Marco says, oh, I know what people think. I just don't talk politics on public platforms. Come on, get your voice out there. Make yourself heard. Start a controversy. Get yourself fired from work. Trevor Gray says the only Taiwanese people who discuss it are those closely affected. I have a friend in trade, and he's certainly feeling the weight of the tariffs. Everyday people don't care. The everyday people don't really care that much. Yeah. Eris said, I can't read that. Yeah, politic or global trade war might seem too far away for Taiwanese people to care about. There are nothing we can do as a tiny country, but the stock market is where we put our money at. Which is funny that you say that, because I mean, it's not that far away from Taiwan, right? Like, a trade war between China and the States is definitely going to affect Taiwan in some way. And I think that's why CMOC was so surprised when I said that people aren't really discussing it in Taiwan, and they're not really panicking, and things are so calm here. And he was very shocked to hear that, because it is so close to Taiwan. But I suppose there's this feeling of, like how you pointed out, what can we do about it? So there's no point in really talking about it. But yeah. Vincent Yu says the best part of Taiwan's roads is you can drive smoothly for over 3,000 meters high up on a mountain. Yeah, sometimes you can. Yeah, that's true. You shop at Costco there. I used to have a Costco membership, but now that I don't have a kitchen, I don't have my Costco membership anymore. Garcian Smith. asks, how expensive a foreign country will be. Oh, he's not asking. How expensive a foreign country will be is determined mainly by how many bad habits you bring along with you. How expensive a foreign country will be is determined mainly by how many bad habits you bring along. What do you mean by that? Oh, I Bill, Taiwan is sometimes too friendly, which can cause problems. I heard there is a party called the 51st Party in Taiwan. I don't know. Phil says, I worked at a Taiwanese company in the US. Hopefully it doesn't affect it. Yeah, I hope not. Irene Diaz says, trade war influence. Trade war influence on everyday job opportunities. Stock market is how you can cash out whenever you need then your job. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess like if the stock market is where people are putting their money, then that's what they're going to be more worried about over the actual trade war itself. So I guess that does make sense when you put it like that. But what are you going to do? Now I'm interested. I want to read up on these recall votes that people are so freaked out about. D-Man says, do you think that the US is having TSMC open a factory in the US so they don't need to worry as much about China attacking Taiwan? Probably. I mean, there's a lot, right? There's a lot to that. Because a part of it is Trump's overarching plan to bring production back to the States. And I mean, and you can argue whether or not that's a good or a bad idea if you want to. And so he wants these chips made in the States. Probably, it would make sense that that's why he's doing it. But I think TSMC is taking their sweet ass time in opening these fabs. And also, the fabs that are there now aren't capable of producing the same level of chips as the ones here in Taiwan are. Because these things are incredibly expensive to build and they take a while. And by the time you've built up the fab to build these chips, the technology has already progressed and moved. And now you've got an old fab by the time you've built it. So they're not producing the super high-end computer chips that are really competitive in the market. That's what I've heard. But is that why they're doing it? I mean, probably, and it's also good for TSMC because they're widening their market and they have to worry less about their whole company going over in some kind of unfortunate, event with China. So yeah, my opinion is probably. Yeah, well, defo affect Taiwan, but as a small country like Taiwan, we can't do shit about it. Discussing about it will only end up with the conclusions you can do you, or you do you. Yeah, I suppose. That's interesting. I mean, just because you can't do anything about it doesn't mean it's not worth talking about, but I get your point. Yeah. Yo, Rohan Y says, I'm guessing the 51st Party may be the lawmakers of the DPP. They got 51 seats. Some support call them the 51 team. I've never even heard of this. I really got to brush up on my Taiwan news. Trevor Gray says, how about thoughts on Taiwan adding digital nomads visa? I worry it could bring some public nuisances to Taiwan like Thailand experiences. Yeah, I mean, what does it mean to be a digital nomad? Do you mean that you're worried about people like Johnny Somali or Vitali, those types coming to Taiwan? Because Taiwan already has a 3-month visa-free stay for most, not for most countries, but many countries. And so if those people are going to come here, cause a nuisance, they can. So having a digital nomad visa, I don't know that it would change it very much, if that's what you're talking about. Oh, but then you said Thailand experiences, so that if you've got old people dating young girls or something. I wonder what you got to explain that a little bit more. But I'm not too worried about it, I don't think. Sam B says China is great. All this good quality products for a great price. Greetings from Thailand. Well, I'm glad you're happy with them, Sam B. Irene Diaz says recalling is something to do with deportation because some of those delegates are working, making some law ruined Taiwan. Okay, interesting. I like the idea of recall votes. Should have it here in Australia. I don't know what a recall vote is. I'm too dumb for that. Nunya Business says, my wife tells me about the recall. She says it was because the KMT is passing laws defunding everything and essentially putting the Supreme Court to a standstill. Yeah, I mean, I remember, God, a year ago there was a recall vote. So I don't know if there's multiple recall votes or if it's just one thing that we're all talking about. But I do remember there was a big controversy over the KMT. Basically, I don't know about freezing, but they cut the defense budget by like an insane amount. And I'm not like a friggin' economicologist, or I'm not running the country. I don't have the qualifications to know these things. But I feel like in the case of Taiwan, when you're put into this situation, cutting the defense budget seems like a kind of a dumb idea. Like, don't you need that? Like, I could understand it if there was some bloating in the government, or if the money was going to places that weren't actually serving the defense of the country. I get it. But I do remember that causing quite the ruckus here in Taiwan for some time. But yeah, so I don't know what the KMT was doing about defunding everything and essentially putting the Supreme Court to a standstill. Double A is still here. That person's going to be the governor of Taiwan after its return. I wonder why, Double A, you're so convinced that there will be a return from Taiwan to China. Like, what makes you so confident that Taiwanese people want to be reunified with China? Garcian Smith, I meant if a person is a heavy drinker, an impulse buyer, a chronic party heads, things will be more expensive for a person living abroad with those kinds of bad habits versus someone who does not. Okay. Oh, right. Okay. I know what you mean. Vincent, you don't insult yourself, Thailand. Lawai Bill says it takes 4 to 5 years to build a fab and get it working with quality. Taiwan will still produce the bulk of high-grade chips, which is, yeah, that's what I was saying as well. 4 to 5 years to build a fab. I mean, 4 to 5 years in the tech world is, multiple generations. So I don't think Taiwan has too much to worry about TSMC building fabs in the States. Vicky Chen, of course, the Kuomintang also counterattack by trying to depose 15 lawmakers. There's so much I don't know about this. I really have to learn up on that. Cutting defense budget is aiding and abetting the enemy. Yeah, a lot of people have been saying that, that it's like akin to treachery almost. Trevor Gray says, I think Taiwan has some pretty specific societal expectations of people living here. Some foreigners in Thailand totally disrupt the culture. I just worry about the floodgates being too open sometimes. I don't know about that. I find in my experience that Taiwanese people are not that different from us as foreigners. Like, of course they're different. Of course they have a different culture and they have different expectations and they have different pressures and they have different ways of looking at the world. But it's not so different that you can't be friends with them. And it's not so different that they don't understand when they're looking at a friggin' weirdo. Like Taiwanese people, like when you see a foreigner acting really oddly in public, it doesn't take long. I mean, first of all the other foreigners who are watching that foreigner know he's a weirdo. And it usually takes a little bit longer for a Taiwanese person to recognize it because a Taiwanese person might not understand foreign culture or whatever, but it doesn't take long for them to be like, okay, this guy's weird. And so I don't know that an influx of foreigners would have a huge influence on Taiwanese culture, because in my experience, they're not like that different, you know? And I mean that in a positive way. I went over that in my last live stream, like when you compare them to Japanese people who, like the difference between Japanese and foreigners, like it's so clear, you know? Whereas here in Taiwan, it's less apparent. Sam B says Trump does not understand macroeconomics. Neither do I, to be honest with you. Irene Diaz says the legislation department has frozen and cut the budget without knowing exactly what they would have cut or frozen. So a lot of departments has cut off the service in certain levels, which is crazy, because that means like, does that mean that these departments are still running just without a budget? Which means the government still has to pay these people's wages? Like, doesn't that bloat the government more? I don't know. Lawai Bill says, I feel safer in Taiwan than in Australia. Australia has almost no defense. I don't want to say anything like crazy naive, but I don't think Australia would have too much to worry about in the event of a war. Maybe not, who knows? Because they are like the closest, I suppose, what you would consider Western ally. But who knows? I'd be interested to see the war games that people play, that play out different scenarios and all the different statistics they get from that. Like, in which scenario would Australia get involved? I'm sure there's war games that like take that into effect. That would be really cool to see. Free. Am I back? Can I get like a quick? Oh God, I lost like 60 viewers. That's understandable. That makes sense. Why that would happen. I can't blame people for leaving a frozen stream. Am I back? Can I get like an audio video check? Okay, good. I'm back. Thank you, Ken. I apologize. I get free internet with this building, and I don't think it's particularly good. I think it's like maybe Chrome or my computer, because this happened yesterday, where YouTube just like ended my stream. Like, it didn't even allow me to reconnect. It was just like, your stream ended. And I was like, what? Which was really annoying. So I think maybe like the cache data in my computer was too much. So I have to like remember to restart my computer before doing a live stream. I'm not sure. Marco just messaged me and said he'll have a look. He's a bit of a computer genius, so I'm sure he'll be able to sort that out. But yeah, don't worry. It wasn't the Chinese. I wasn't stricken by a drone or whatever. God, where was I? What have I missed? I agree. I just hope many weirdos don't arrive. Yeah, I mean, nobody wants like weird foreigners in Taiwan. I think that's what we were talking about. And then I got frozen. All good. Now only the true remain. Yeah. Lucas is here in the chat. What's up, buddy? You just missed. Why does it say Lucas? Didn't you change your channel name? You just missed the great freeze of my live stream. Yeah, you have a limit on the amount of data you can use each month. Need to upgrade. Yeah, but I can't, because it's not my internet. It's the building's internet, which is super safe. Taiwan has health insurance just like Japan. Oh yeah, you guys were talking about Japan earlier somewhere. To live in Japan is quite stressful compared with overseas. We have to follow the same trail as what the majority of people do. Yeah. I get that from people who live there. I think it depends. It kind of depends. Like, if you look at like someone like Sam, like, he doesn't walk else's trail. Like, guy's a trailblazer, and he has a lovely time in Japan. I think if you were Japanese, it's probably a lot more stressful. Like, a lot of people make the point that living in Taiwan as a foreigner is a lot nicer than living in Taiwan as a Taiwanese, because we live such a relatively stress-free life, right? Oh, Alan says both are good. Cheers, Alan. I didn't know you were still with us. Thank you. Damn it, this is my secret account for my new YouTube channel. Wow, a new channel. Looking forward to seeing that. Double A is leaving. See you next time. See you, buddy. Can Cherry says, buy a house in Japan for the cost of a case of beer in Australia, but I sure don't want to work there. I'll do digital nomad maybe. Yeah, it would be so cool if I could do like YouTube there in Japan, but I just don't know. I feel like it's so saturated, and I don't know that my content would like stand out in Japan very much, you know? I would like to think that people watch for me and my personality, but I just don't know that I stand out. I don't think I'm that good at making videos. Like they aren't compelling enough where people would follow me there, my audience would follow. But then, you know, having said that, like right now I'm doing a live stream and so many of you guys have been watching me for like 10 years and you guys followed me here into Taiwan. So maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I know you could buy a house in Japan for like fucking blueberries, which would be so cool. Trevor Gray says, I think Taiwan is the easiest place to integrate and live a comfortable life. Health insurance, safety, etc. But sometimes you can get bored, but I don't know why. And well said, Trevor. I agree. It is very easy to integrate here. People are so welcoming. People don't really care that you're a foreigner. They leave you alone. You can do whatever you want. And sometimes it does get boring. And I think that's just because there's not as much maybe to do, or there's less, like as a YouTuber, there's less content to shoot. I think that's interesting. For people abroad, you know, it's very difficult to get a international audience to care about Taiwan, as opposed to like in China or in Japan, where so many people want to learn about that country. It's relatively easy to find content to do. But the flip side, especially with Japan, is that there's a pretty strong chance that someone's already filmed a video about it. So, but well said. I agree. And Zach, Batman Hassack, $2.99 Australian to add to the Australia fund. Yes, thank you. I need God, I need OBS so I can add. For those of you who missed the earlier part of the stream, I owe Tokyo Sam Australia, so I'm currently trying to work up the funds to buy Australia because he demands it, and Australia is very expensive. Very expensive. I mean, I can't remember. I remember I was on a flight. I can't remember. I remember that was a stupid thing to say. I remember I was on a flight from Dubai to Manchester, and I was sat next to this Australian couple who were from, I want to say Sydney, but it might not have been. And I remember they told me the average cost of a house, and it was insane. Like Sydney and Vancouver, I think, are parallel with just how absurd the cost is. I do not envy Australians. I don't know how they're doing that. And I wonder like what their solution is going to be. And Canada's, because they're in the same boat, really. A lot of the issues are caused by the same thing, and the issues are also very similar. And you can see that across multiple planes as well with Australia and Canada. I talked about this in my last live stream, but even in childcare, when I was in university, Australia and Canada often shared information, and a lot of the programs that you could join, like if you wanted to be an au pair, you could do it in Australia. Double A, $2 Australian. I think that's an Australian dollar. What do you mean by Australia fund? Earlier in the chat, Sam made a joke because he donated. No, I think it was Ken did a $2 super chat to me, and this super chat said he's also a huge fan of Tokyo Sam. And I said, do I now owe Tokyo Sam that $2 since it was directed at him? And Sam says, no, I don't just owe him $2. I owe him all of Australia. So now I have to buy Australia. And Double A, I saw your comment earlier. You said the Chinese government basically owns Australia. So now I'm wondering if I have to buy Australia from the Chinese government. And since you seem to represent the Chinese government so well, perhaps you can give me a price. How much are you willing to sell Australia to me? This is another reason I love these live streams. What was the town? What was last week's live stream? Marco, help me out here. I wonder if Marco's still in the live stream. There was there was a town in southern Ontario that we were memeing about. It was just south of Niagara. Was it Welland? Welland, Ontario. Do I have that right? It's somewhere very close to where Sam is from. It was Welland. It was fucking Welland. And now we're talking about buying Australia. This has to be a thing. I have to have someone help me set up OBS so I can get a Buy Australia fund overlay on my live stream. And I also heard that OBS can somehow make my stream a little bit more stable, which would really help. Ken S, again with $5 more. Ken S, thank you. I'm gonna have a feast tonight. Rent in Sydney is 4 to 5 times the cost of Zhonghechu. In where? Where's Zhonghechu? Whatever it is, I believe you. Zach with $2.99. Thank you. Average cost in Melbourne is $1 million plus Australia for a house. That's fucking crazy. Sorry, I just want to zoom out of my maps here. I had to find Welland, Ontario, but now I want to go to. Is Melbourne nice? Like, it must be nice. I have friends that live there. Like, a lot of Taiwanese people live in Melbourne. It has to be nice. What the hell? Like, what is in there? Oh, it's in a bay. This is Prozzy's random Google map thing. I'm gonna drop my little Google Maps man into what's a good area? Let's go to Richmond, because we have a Richmond around Vancouver. Yeah, it looks like a shithole. I need OBS again to share my screen, but it literally dropped me in front of a burnt out building. Okay, it doesn't look too bad. It literally dropped me off in a building that has recently burnt down. It looks kind of nice. It's got colonial buildings and stuff. But $1 million to live here. It looks like in a movie or something. It actually looks kind of quaint. There's like a lot of older buildings, some cool pubs. I could see it's got like a vibe. It's got like a cinematic vibe, you know? Like you could film a movie here or something. It's kind of nice. But $1 million plus, that's ridiculous. That's like most cities are like that now in Canada. Excuse me, $1 million plus in most major Canadian cities. I think that's what you're looking at. The Chinese have a 100-year lease on a major port, and it's a big political football right now. What, in Australia they do? Do they? Or what? Australia needs to downsize government and downsize immigration. Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing in Canada. And that's kind of the conservative, what the conservatives are running on right now is to decrease immigration and decrease the size of the government to hopefully get spending under control and put pressure on the municipalities to build more houses to kind of alleviate the prices. And I think they also have a plan to offer first-time home buyers a tax break or something like that. But the conservatives aren't looking like they're going to win because Trump went in and is now the only talking point in the election, which is like, I think a bit sad because I think the Canadian election is about a lot more than Trump. It's fucking crazy to me how quickly Canadians forgot about all of the issues that Canada is facing because of Trump. That really surprised me. But they have a 100-year lease on an Australian port. That is crazy if Australia actually did that. Xinbei, oh, okay, more than that part of town. I got you, Ken. Vincent, who did you vote for the Canadian president? We have a prime minister, and I don't want to tell you. Maybe I'll tell you who I voted for. I'm not sure. Melbourne was nice, says Ken Cherry. Ken says Melbourne isn't good, bro. Sorry to say. I don't know. I just like went through a quick like Google Maps street thing, and some of it seems nice. Some of it seemed a bit shit. Double A says, I'm wondering why most of the donations are from Australia, province of China. That's some Trump talk right there. Are we making Australia the 51st state of America? But they're not. It's going to be the first state of Prozzy because I'm buying it. And Double A, you still haven't given me a number. I need to know how much I'm buying this from your government. China has a 100-year lease on the Australian government. Yeah. And same with New Zealand too. Isn't New Zealand like super like in bed with the Chinese government? Isn't that the case? That's about the same for Vancouver. I think it's more, honestly. I think Vancouver, like I think 20 years ago, Vancouver was like $1 million for a house. And now I think it's like a few $1,000,000 for a house in in Vancouver. Marco says, Vincent, no president in Canada. Canada has a king. Yeah, we do. I had someone who asked me about this yesterday. It was my Irish friend asked me if Canadians care about the monarchy, and my answer was no, nobody does. Unless you're like older and you grew up with it. A Chinese-owned land bridge group won the bid for a lease of Port Darwin. The then country Liberal-controlled Northern Territory government under then Chief Minister Alan Gillis granted a 99-year lease. No way! Where? Port Darwin. So that's Northern Australia, if my geography serves me right. It is. Port Darwin. Wow, what the fuck? Darwin's so small. I've heard of Darwin a bunch. I didn't realize it was such a tiny little place. Where the hell is Port Darwin? When you go to Port Darwin, can you see like this port? Like, is there like Chinese flags there? Why? What was the thinking behind doing that? That seems like a huge national security risk, isn't it? They must have been paid a shitload of money. Where the hell is Port Darwin? Am I looking in the wrong place? Port Darwin, Australia. Oh, it's across. Is it? Is it on this island? East Point. I cannot find this fucking port. Does it exist? Are you messing with me? Yeah, Australia and Canada seem pretty similar in terms of housing and their situation. Yeah, and like I said, across multiple levels of too. Yes, Australia is a province of China. Yeah. Taiwan says, where's Prosy? I'm right here. What's up? Dark Haven says, my friend is selling at approximately $1.4 million. Jesus. Did you think he's going to get that for it? Bill says, Melbourne, weather-wise, has 4 seasons in one day. Bill says, Darwin is easy to invade Australia. Good plan. Wu-Tang. Oh, I was talking to, is that the same Wu-Tang from Tokyo Sam stream yesterday or 2 days ago? Yeah. Zach says, that's the one thing I kind of like, Bill. Yeah. The Average Joe says, love the recent cinematic moto video. Are you happy with how it turned out? Yeah, so he's talking about a video I threw together randomly. I was bored. I should have been focusing on producing content for YouTube, but I like threw this weird cinematic video that I put out on Instagram, and I'm happy with it, but I needed more shots. I repeated too many shots. And so I am happy with the way the shots turned out, but I should have gotten more of them, and I could have done a better job at editing them. But thank you for watching that. I am surprised people paid any attention to it at all, because cinematic videos don't get as much attention because so many people are able to do it. And thank you for saying you loved it. Canned Cherry says, Port Darwin is, in Northern Territory nearby a major U.S. military base. Also very interesting times. Why would they do, like, what is the justification for that? Why would they do that? The Japanese destroyed Port Darwin already. What? This is so confusing. Treasure Gray says, do you use a helmet camera to protect yourself from terrible drivers? I don't. I should, but I mean, there's so much CCTV everywhere in Taiwan. There's cameras pointed in every direction. So I feel like if I'm not filming myself riding, the government probably is. But I should. I know you can get a camera installed like on the scooter itself. And that way you don't have the weight on your helmet. You have to worry about like turning it on and off and stuff and charging it. And that would be kind of cool to have. I might look into getting that. Vincent Yu, so what? Hong Kong has over 90 years lease. Yeah, but that's a different Hong Kong and like a random military port in Australia are two completely different things. I don't know that you can compare those. Marowinacid. Apologies for butchering your name. I'm shocked knowing that the King of Canada is the same as the King of Australia. I wonder if Charles himself knew. Yeah. And he's the King of New Zealand and the King of a whole bunch of other places. Trevor Gray, some old lady hit my bike with her SUV, and I didn't have it. Police told me I need to go after her, but of course I didn't. That's a tough place to be. Ken S, another $5 Australian. Thank you so much. Australia is WEF controlled. The government sell them out for a short-term dollar, so they sold Darwin Port to China. Wow. Does anyone know how much? Like, because it must have been a fucking crazy amount. Let me Port Darwin sold to the Chinese. October 2015, the Chinese-owned Landbridge Group won the bid for a lease of Port Darwin. Okay, sorry, so they didn't sell it, but they leased it. This is exactly what Buddy said. 506 million, that's it? Is that right? Or is that reasonable? Like, how much does a port lease go for? What the fuck am I talking about? But $506 million doesn't seem like that much money for leasing a whole friggin' port in a foreign country. I know they do that like all over Africa. The Chinese Navy has a lot of ports in Africa, but I don't even think those are leased. I think China just straight up owns those, because what they do is like they'll lend out a whole bunch of money to developing African nations, knowing that there is no goddamn way those countries are going to be able to pay the Chinese back. And so what the Chinese say is, okay, well, if you can't pay us back, then all of that infrastructure that we helped you build, we now own, including these military ports. And it's a really clever way of expanding their territory abroad. But 106 million for 99, was it 99 years or 90 years? 99 years doesn't seem like very much money. That is incredible. That is just blows my mind. The Average Joe Seamilk has this great cinematic video from back in China. Still watch it every now and again. These are for eternity. Nice. Well, I'm sure he appreciates that. Ken asks, $506 million is like 300 million USD. Too cheap. Yeah, I mean, especially for 99 years, because like so much can change in 99 years. And all, like, let's say, for example, it turns out that Australia suddenly realizes that was a giant fucking mistake, and all they got for it was $500 million, which is like, in terms of government spending and how much a country earns and how much a country spends, isn't 500 million like a drop in the bucket? Isn't it? Am I crazy? And are me and Ken are on board? Are we crazy in thinking that? And if only the port is 500 million, then how much is all of Australia going to cost me? Why doesn't YouTube tell me how much I've made in super chats? And that way and that way I can see how much I've got left to buy Australia. Fan funding, super chat, stickers, channel members, gifting. I don't want to. Oh shit, that's just a whoops. That was just a filter. Yeah, so buying Australia for Tokyo Sam is going to cost me quite a lot of money. Multinational corporations, banks, mining, etc. run Australia, not the government, and he's being serious. Yeah, I mean, people say that about Canada as well when you talk about how Canada only has a handful of companies running all of the economy there. So like we only have like a couple of companies running all of the grocery stores. We only have like one or two airline companies. I mean, you know, they might start companies under them with different names, but it's all controlled by one. And or telecommunications, we have like Rogers and Bell, and that's fucking it. And what it means is that it's incredibly difficult for new companies to break ground in Canada and compete competitively because they can't, because there's so many companies have a monopoly on all these things. Can us again? What are you gonna get for dinner? Oh, my light turned off. This is my who makes this? I can't remember. It's a good light, but that battery did not last very long. Aperture makes these. Let me see if I can. How much battery does this one have? Let me change the, oh God, there we go. A new light. Let me dim this because that's quite bright. Sorry, guys. Having a bit of a lighting crisis here. Where can I put this where it doesn't look stupid? Let's put it here. Oh, God. One of my dear friends, subscribers, channel members, Dion, bought me this. He has, unfortunately, since passed away, but missed that guy. Why is it flickering? Do you guys care about the lighting? Should I just forget this? Or is it funny watching me struggle with this garbage? Why are you flickering, you piece of shit? Oh, the dim switch is freaking out. Okay, hopefully that's... There we go. Lighting thing fixed. Kenneth, what are you going to get for dinner tonight? Bruv? That's a very good question. Since you've given me what, like 5, 10, 15, 20, you've given me like so much. I could afford that. You know, like 20, 25, $30, whatever you're at right now, Australian goes a long way in Taiwan. Any suggestions? Is that where this chat's going? Any suggestions? I'm not sure. I had McDonald's for lunch, so Ken S, another $5. Rest in peace, Dion. I remember him from Patreon. Great guy, and he was an incredible guy, very patient, very generous, and he came to visit us in Taiwan, and he had a really great time. And he's very intelligent as well. When he was here, he was quite sick, and that made him a bit slower to do things. Yeah, he still had quite a lot of energy. But you could tell he put a lot of thought into the things he said. And just one of those people who was incredibly open to new things, you know, especially for his age. He wasn't like super, super old, but he was like a good generation older than me. And what I found really interesting is like, even when he knew he wasn't going to maybe enjoy something, like we took him to the Filipino disco, which is like a club, I guess, in the daytime where a lot of Southeast Asian goes to party on Sundays, and it just wasn't his thing, and he still sat through it and tried it, and he had a really great time, and that sucks. I've never. Well, it doesn't matter. It's not about me, right? I just miss him. Yeah, and Kenneth also says 500 million is a drop in the bucket. That's what we were talking about earlier. But yeah, David says it was a very bad deal. I'm sure the Aussies regret it now. Yeah, I mean, I bet. When did that happen? 2015? Yeah, 10 years ago. I wonder if they're regretting it now. I wonder what the people of Australia think, or if people in Australia even know, because I didn't know about it. And I keep a relatively decent eye on what's going on around China and the South China Sea and this kind of the world. So yeah. Eris says that, I cannot say that name. I apologize. I think a lot of countries have the same issue. I remember the UK sold their train to France, so the traffic fee is super high now. I can't be sure. You might have to ask Alan. Yeah, and also Taiwan did that with one of their nuclear power plants as well. They sold a nuclear power plant to Who? Someone. They built, get this is crazy. I don't know if this is true, by the way. I would like to get this fact checked. But my ex told me that Taiwan had built a fully functional nuclear power plant. And before they turned it on, the country voted to not use it because of what happened in Fukushima. And so they had to dismantle this brand new nuclear power plant and sell it to another country, which, like, what a waste of money. I don't know if that's true, but my ex told me that. What an insane waste of money. Darkhaven, is it a free port in Australia? That would be even crazier for that amount of money. What's a free port? Canned cherry, I got rogered by Rogers on my phone plan. Yeah, dude. God, I hate Rogers and Bell. I wonder what the plans go for now. Like, they're so expensive, especially compared to Taiwan. Zach says everything is a big 2-4 in Australia in every industry. Yeah. Seems like so many Australians are not happy with the way Australia is going. The Average Joe says, congrats to Alan and Prozzy interview channel starting with a splash. What's the plan for the future? New videos coming? Yeah, I mean, we've had a few hiccups. Who do we interview? Ku, and then we are trying to plan to interview more and more people for the podcast, but it's going to take some time. Rest in peace, Dion. Yes, very much so. It feels almost inappropriate to go from talking about Dion to then all of a sudden the fucking economy of Australia. But what are you going to do? Wagwa Bill says, make money in Australia, spend money in Taiwan. Yeah, I mean, the Taiwanese would appreciate that very much. You're bringing Australian money into Taiwan. That would be great. The Average Joe says Austria did the same. Built a nuclear power plant, then newer turned it on in the 70s. Oh, never turned it on in the 70s. Yeah, it's wild. Vincent uses absolutely no nuclear power plant in Taiwan for current technology. Yeah, there's a big argument over nuclear power in Taiwan. Some people are against it and some people are for it. Wagwa Bill says there are over 600,000 mainlanders in Australia who vote and can't ignore their votes. Federal election next week. Why are they allowed to vote? Like, what's the prerequisite for being able to vote in Australia? Like, surely you have to be an Australian citizen. Oh, but then I guess, are you allowed to have dual citizenship? You must be, and I wonder if that's why. Irene Diaz says the worst cause is the government still put budget into maintaining the nuclear facility safety until this moment. And they're all citizens. Okay, yeah. Yeah, which is wild. Like, I think he's talking about people who became Australians, yeah, but are still mainlanders. And then you have to ask the question, like, do you trust those people? Like, sure, they're Australian now, but like, how do you know how much infiltration the Chinese government has on that? And that's a big conversation here in Taiwan, which is the original idea of this stream, is like, how much of a hand does China have in your government? Hans V, citizen and voting is mandatory. You get a fine if you don't. Shut up. Is that true? Is voting mandatory in Australia? Darkhaven, Freeport is a free trade zone, a class of special economic zone. Okay. So if that port in Darwin was a free port, would that mean that they get free trade in Australia? Like, no tariffs? Because that would be nuts. Sam B, to bring Australian money into Taiwan, Australia needs a trade deficit with Taiwan, which is what Trump does not understand about macroeconomics. Yeah. Irene Diaz says deportation. Yeah, where were we with that one, Irene? Oh, I don't know. Ken Cherry, Labour Party is kissing the Chinese electorates behind. Yes, voting is mandatory. What? But like, what if you're someone? Why? What's the? Someone explain that to me. Why? Why? Okay, why is it mandatory? And then what's the punishment for not voting? I was overseas and I got fines in the mail for not voting. I had to ask them nicely to revoke the fine. Why Go Bill says discrimination is not allowed. Everyone is democratic here, even if you're a communist. Phil says they leave China for Australia to vote to make sure it's more like China. I wasn't here for the Australia combo. I'm just confused. What's the rationale for making everyone vote? Why? Because surely that, I mean, there's some people who don't maybe follow the political light, like voting isn't a right then, is it? It's not a right to vote. It's something feels very weird about that. And then how much is the fine, by the way, if you don't vote? Is it not that much? Is it ridiculous? Like, they can't put you in prison, can they? I just don't understand that. I'm having a hard time. Because like if I was Australian, let's say, for example, and I didn't much care for Australian politics, and I felt personally, I'm not saying I actually feel this way, and I'm also not Australian. I'm just saying if, like a hypothetical situation, if I was Australian and I felt like my vote didn't matter and I didn't care, so I wasn't going to vote, but then I would feel weird about being forced to vote because I don't know. Oh, but then I guess at that point it doesn't matter, right? Because you don't think your vote matters, so then you may as well vote for someone who cares. Marco says voting is a duty, not a right in Australia. Interesting. Phil says I'd be getting fined like crazy because I've never voted. 55 Australian dollars, says Bill. That's the fine for not voting. Irene thought voting was a right, not a duty. Ken Cherry says big fines, but yes, you need to revoke fines. So many high-rise trust funds, kids from China take up big voter bases. It's crazy. Vincent Yu says I heard that before. It's true. Marco says the fine is like $20. Okay, well, Bill says it's 55. Fines in Australia kind of suck, but the voting fine here is pretty cheap, $99. Han says $20. Well, wow, what? Fuck this, I'm just going to Google it. How much is the fine for not voting in Australia 2025? $20. That's what 9news.com.au says. And a whole bunch of other websites. So it seems to be $20. I think it's over 100 and they can cancel your fucking driver's license. No. Ken, get out of town. You can't cancel your driver's license for not voting. I've never looked at voting like that. A duty and not a right. Like if you're Australian, it's your duty to take part in the democratic. But then is it a duty? Like if you're forced to do it lest you pay a fine, is that a duty? Like, for example, when you have jury duty in America, do they have a fine for not doing that? Do I win Price is Right? I'll tell you what, Marco, when I buy Australia to give to Sam, let me just have a quick look at Australia really quick. Because you won that Jeopardy round, I will give you, what's a part of Australia that no one fucking wants? I'll give you Northern Territory. How about that? You can have Darwin. Why Go Bell says, many local politicians are Chinese background and financially backed by China. And same in Canada. There's the what is she? The something of Toronto. There's a guy on Instagram who always makes fun of her. Or is she the mayor of Toronto or something? She's Chinese, which I find to be insane that you're even able to work in the Canadian government while being Chinese. I find that absurd. Which goes back to earlier in the stream when we were talking about that poll that we're asking Chinese people if they thought that the Chinese government was unfriendly to Taipei, I suppose it would be even less of a conversation in Canada. So maybe it's not that crazy. So yeah, Ken says, I know they can cancel your driver's license. It sounds like Ken got his driver's license canceled for not voting. That's crazy. Fines depend on which state you live in. Oh, why? Really? So it's a federal law, but the fine depends on the state you live in. Phil says you can get arrested for not going to jury duty, I think. What the fuck? David says Australia has a unique blend of what I call authoritarian egalitarianism. Yeah. Marco says we have this in Canada. We get punished for not serving without an excuse. Dude, I've never done jury duty. I want Canberra. Yeah, the capital. Marco, have you done jury duty? Am I supposed to do jury duty? I've never fucking done jury duty in Canada ever. I don't live there. Aaron Diaz says, at least voting shall be right, not obligation to give any punishment without doing it. Yeah, I'm kind of with Irene on that one. Like, you shouldn't be fined for not fucking voting. That sounds a little extreme. Phil says, the only time I served jury duty, it was a murder trial. Holy shit, really? You know what also I find crazy about jury duty is that you don't have to have any... Well, actually, I don't know this. I suppose I should ask. When you do jury duty, let's say for like a murder trial, like Phil here, is there a check? Like, do you have to have like a fucking university degree? Or can they like pull in some homeless guy off the street to hear this case? Because murder trials can go on for fucking ages. And I would imagine it takes a certain level of intelligence to be able to really absorb all the information that's giving to you. Especially with really complicated cases. So like to do jury duty, like how the fuck does that work? I have no idea. I've never done it. And Marco is saying that the mayor of Toronto was Olivia Chow. She was born in British Hong Kong, but she's been in Canada almost her entire life. Yeah, I reckon she's got ties to China. Wagwa Bill says, Aussies, don't forget to vote next Saturday. Yeah, or the Chinese will come, or the fucking Australians government will come and take your goddamn car. They'll set your house on fire. Ken Cherry says Sydney is Sydney. Yeah, good one. Kenna says they threatened me with driver's license cancellation. Serious, bro. That's crazy. Yeah, that's the other thing. My buddy is from New Zealand, and he is like behind on his university payments or something, and they're threatening to arrest him if he ever goes back. Fucking crazy. Phil, if you get a letter for jury duty and don't show, you get in trouble. What? But how the hell are they going to send me a letter if I live all the way over here? Hans V says, this is a federal election. The state elections might be different, right? Marco, it's random selection. Some people never get selected, and you're not a resident, so you can't get selected. Right. I hope I'm not a resident. I don't think I have an address there. Ken S says, they fine you for not voting in Australia as each party gets paid money for each vote. What? What do you mean they get paid for each money for each vote? Like if I vote for, I don't know what the fucking political parties are in Australia. Let's say I voted for like the Liberal Party. My vote gets the money somehow? And where does that money come from? Who is paying them? Am I paying to vote? Do you pay to vote? You can't, surely. This is fucking fascinating. I apologize to all the people who might not be here. I didn't realize I have such a... What time it is? Why do I have so many Australian viewers right now? What time is it in, I don't know, Melbourne? Oh, it's only a few hours ahead of me. I should know that. That was a dumb question to ask. Yeah, that's insane. The lawyers check the jurors beforehand for conflicts of interest and stuff. Yeah, okay, yeah. I know that makes sense, but like you can literally just be like a dude and then you're on the jury deciding someone's going, like if they're going to go to prison for life or not. That's so much stress. Like I feel like I should have a degree, you know? It's fucking nuts. Carl Wagner says, why don't you work with Serpentze and Seamilk anymore? Are they too famous now and think that you're a loser? Yes. No. I don't know. We don't have. I don't know why. We just never. I talk to Smoke often. Maybe we'll make a video together one day, but we just haven't. Marco says elections cost taxpayer money. In Australia, you have to vote, but you don't have to vote for anyone. You can drop an empty ballot or a spoiled ballot into the box and it's legal and counted. What the fuck then? Now you might understand why I'm moving here there. Yeah. Vincent Yu says, I definitely don't want to be selected as a jury. Yeah, fuck me too. Jesus Christ. Mark Darkhaven says they qualify people for jury duty by asking them questions to prove a non-bias and establish a baseline understanding. No further degree required. Okay, yeah, I suppose that makes sense. Like before you go to jury duty, like I suppose they have to ask you, like, do you understand? Like, do you know what murder is? You know, like really basic questions like that, I suppose. Voting is free in Australia, but then how I don't understand what Ken said. The government pays into each party for each vote they get. Not sure how it works, but it's true. Yeah, but where's that money coming from? That's what I don't understand. 11:30 p.m. in Sydney. Thank you. Dark Haven says I was selected, but the case was settled before selection. Fuck, you got lucky there if they settled it out of court. We pay to vote with high taxes. God, Australia is so fucked. What the hell? Vincent Yu says I saw lots of TV episodes. Yeah. Irene Diaz says Taiwan has a similar system. Parties get sponsored money from central governments every year. The ratio is decided once every 4 years. Yeah, I know. Because I know political parties obviously have money that they have to raise to pay wages and to run campaigns and things, but I thought they just generated that themselves. I didn't realize they were like handed it to them from the government. There's so much about the world I don't understand, you guys. Jesus Christ. David says, just read this online. Crazy. A driver plowed into a crowd at a street festival celebrating Filipino heritage in Vancouver on Saturday night, killing at least 9 people and injuring others. Jesus. That just happened? Garcia and Smith, look at it like this. It's part of checks and balances. There's potential for abuse not being checked by your peers and making a judgment call. Yeah. Do you go to prostitutes in Taiwan? No. Thank you for asking, Carl, but you enjoy. Kenneth says it's a Ponzi scheme. The government comes from the government comes from the government, as is a two-party system. Yeah. Lucas ChatGPT'd it. In Australia, the government gives money to political parties and candidates based on how many votes they get in an election. What the fuck? But isn't the government the political party that won? Wouldn't they just give it to themselves? I don't get. This is why I wasn't good in school, you guys. Prosy is the prosy. Yeah, I am the prostitute. You come to me, friend. I'll buy Australia. This is an episode of Prosy Watches Chat complain about Australia. I know. Does this... But I mean, so many of you are still watching, so I'm just like keeping this going. Thanks, Lucas. Agree, my bro. Australia, like Canada, is totally run by foreigners. Yeah. After an election, parties and candidates who get a certain minimum percentage of votes, usually more than 4% of the first preference votes, are eligible to receive a set amount of money per vote, says Lucas. For example, in the 2022 federal election, the amount was around really? Almost $3 a vote? Hot damn. Interesting. Thanks, Lucas. Irene says this is the same in Taiwan. It is corrupt, says Ken. Irene says 1 vote is 30 NT. Shit. Do we have that in Canada? Is that a Canada thing? Marco, tell me. Marco knows everything. Garcian Smith says, Presley, I don't need you need a degree of any kind when the lawyers say this person was stabbed and the other person 55 times, and I trust you make the right call in the final verdict. Well, no, because, I mean, of course, yeah, if the situation's that simple, but like, I really enjoy watching like crime YouTube videos. Like, if you ever guys watch JCS Psychology, Fuck, it's so good. And they often go into cases where it's so much more complicated than this guy was stabbed 55 times. There's so much more to it, and it's up to the lawyers to tell a compelling story, and then the jurors to know who they believe. And I would hate to be put in that position as a juror, as the jury. Okay, Ken S. again. Jesus, Ken, I got to start doing live streams when you're awake because this is insane. Shout out to Lucas. Bro knows what's up. I also great videos, bro. Cheers, Ken. So now here's another question. I had to give Ken's $2 to Sam. He demanded that I buy Australia, which is why the stream is going on for so long, 2.5 hours, so I can make money to buy Australia to give to Sam. Ken's new super chat as a shout out to Lucas. I now have to give this $5 Australian to Lucas, and I can't buy any more countries over here, Carl says, do you get paid by the government to talk positive about Taiwan and negative about other parts of China? Yeah, it really depends. If the government hires me to promote a tourist attraction, then of course I have to talk positively about it. Do I get paid to talk shit about China? No. I talk shit about China because I lived there for so long, and I now have chosen to live in Taiwan as my home. And it just so happens to be that the Chinese government is threatening my home with war and all kinds of other horrible things. And that's why I talk about shit about China. I'm not being paid to. It's simply telling the truth. Ken S is causing trouble with more money. Yeah. Ken S knows how to spend his money. He's causing rifts between YouTubers. He's literally causing YouTube drama with his money. And Carl, if you lived in a country that was under threat constantly, I'm sure you're the same as I do, but I'm assuming you live in a rather safe country, and so you're able to talk positively of China. And also, if you've watched my content, it's not like I'm all negative about China, and it's not like I'm all positive about Taiwan. That's simply not me. If you've watched my content, I feel like I have a relatively balanced approach to it, and I don't make my videos with the mindset of like, this is going to be a positive video or this is going to be a negative video. I come at it with like, this is just what I think. And whether or not people think it's a negative thing or a positive thing is up to the audience to decide. I mean, my recent video was called Why Do I Love Taiwan So Much? Oh, my mouth is so dry. But when you go and watch it, I wasn't blowing smoke up anyone's asses. In fact, I said some rather negative things about Taiwan, which took Taiwanese people kind of aback a bit because I think they were waiting for me to say something really positive about Taiwan. And I didn't. And I got some complaints about that. But I don't understand, Carl, why you would peg me as someone who's like a shill for Taiwan or anyone for that matter. But the fact that you think that I'm talking shit about China because I'm getting paid to is a ridiculous sentiment. I live in an apartment building here in Taichung that's literally facing China. And at any moment, something could happen. And that stress doesn't affect me too much in my day-to-day life because, of course, you can't think about something like that all the time because you'll go nuts, but it's still a stress that's there. And it's not, the Japanese who are being threatening. It's not the Koreans. It's not the Indians. It's fucking one country that's doing it, Carl. That's why I do it. Phil says, I mean, Australia belongs to China. Quote Winston, so it's somewhat related to your channel. Yeah. Winston has so many crazy ideas. Zach, $2.99. Because if you lived in China for 2 years, good plus bad. Because of you, I lived in China for 2 years, good plus bad. Oh, well, I mean, I hope you at least enjoyed it. Like you can't have, I think 2 years is a good amount of time in China before it gets kind of stale, a bit old. You start to see the cracks in society and the way things work there. That's how I felt in China after a number of years. There was something like inauthentic about the whole experience. And it's very difficult to put into words, but there was something very temporary about the whole thing. Like I couldn't enjoy simple things. Like I couldn't, like a really lovely street, at least where I lived, right? I know in Beijing you can probably get a bit of this, but where I lived, like a really cool street with interesting looking traditional buildings and fun little shops in there, was built to look like that, and very recently. And so it didn't have like the history and the bones of the place. And so I found it a bit like weirdly Orwellian. I don't know how to explain it. And I never got the chance to see Beijing, and I wish I did, because you can go to all the hutongs and see those alleyways and really get to experience sort of a more authentic story. It sounds douchey when I put it like that, but it's the only way I can think to explain it. And unfortunately, now a lot of those hutongs in Beijing are being replaced with like skyrise hotels, which is a shame, because I haven't been to Beijing, but I've heard a lot of good things. Carl Wagner, here he is. 6 euros, pounds. China wants only the best for Taiwan. Anyways, take this money and stop whining. I'm not. Thank you for the money, Carl. I do appreciate it. When you say China wants the best for Taiwan, and this isn't me whining, we're having a discussion here, Carl. What do you mean by that? I'll give you an example. Like, the stream initially was about these Chinese people who were deported for what? For promoting the idea that China should annex Taiwan through force. Okay. So, and that's not an uncommon idea. I have lots of Chinese friends myself who have that same idea. Okay, so what you're saying is that you want war to come to Taiwan. Okay. Now, is that wanting the best for Taiwan and Taiwanese people? Because Taiwanese people certainly don't want that. So what do you mean when you say China only wants the best for Taiwan? What does that mean? Like, do they want the best for Taiwan just so long as that Taiwan becomes reunited with China? Like, is it a caveat? Is there an ultimatum there? Because if you want the best for the people of Taiwan, then you just leave them the hell alone, wouldn't you? Do you get my point? Like, am I making any sense? Ken says China wants the best for China. Nice one. Carl, but I do appreciate your super chat. I really do. I'll give you a like and a love. Love you, Carl, with mouth. Bill says you can ask China to fund you to be a politician in Australia to buy. Oh, geez, there was a whole friggin' chat up here I missed. Marco says, Prasi, I think the per vote subsidy ended in 2015. Oh, you're talking about Canada? Because I don't remember Canada having something like that. Lucas says, you also need some more money so you can pay me for that roadcaster you bought/stole for your podcast. That's true. We snatched a roadcaster from Lucas. And now we're going to force him to come to Taiwan to beat us up to pay for it. Shit, yeah, we do have to pay back for that. Like, jokes aside, we do have to pay for that. So now I got to buy Australia. Fuck. And pay for this roadcaster. I still haven't seen it. Did you give it to Alan? We've done nothing with it yet. Zach says, yeah, it can be super fake and artificial at times, but there are many beautiful things about it and the people. Yeah, I would agree. I did see some very beautiful parts of China as well. You know, like I remember I went to where was I? Jiangxi province. And me and Simon climbed a bunch of mountains there, and it was really, really, really pretty. And I really like that. And there is some beautiful nature there. I'll give them that. What do you think about Di Guo You and Hua Xue You in your food? Gutter oil. Yeah, I mean, I definitely got sick a lot. That's for sure. Like gutter oil, I didn't like see any restaurants doing that, I don't think, but there was definitely some dodgy restaurants that I got really sick at, for sure. China wants the best. If by best you mean they want to take it over. Yeah, which is like my point, right? That's what Phil says. Copper Newt says my uncle is Australian. And he said the Chinese immigrants are rude and impolite. 70% of the time they refuse to fit in. Often group
often group and exist in their circle. Common complaint about Chinese tourists as well. Yeah. Daniel Yes says, I think that's just something to build for looking good, but no other reason for prestige. Carl Wagner says, China is superior. Maybe Taiwan should just accept it as a part of China. Yeah, but they don't want. And okay, again, you when you. Okay, Carl, I genuinely, I don't want to dismiss anything you're saying, and I don't want to belittle you or anything like that. But you have to be really specific when you say things like, China is superior. It's like, well, in what way? And then you'd also have to lay out what your kind of beliefs are and what's important to you, right? Like if you say something like China is superior, it's like, okay, well then you must value very different things to Taiwanese people, because most Taiwanese people would disagree with you. Most Taiwanese people very much value their independence and their democracy and their right to vote and say what they feel and live in that kind of society. And so in that sense, it's not superior. So you'd have to specify. Maybe Taiwan should just accept it as a part of China. And maybe, who knows, maybe one day they will. Maybe China will be able to infiltrate Taiwan on such a deep societal level that most people would agree that Taiwan should be a part of China. Who knows? But fundamentally, it's up to Taiwanese people to decide and not China. Right? You could make the same argument that America is superior to Canada because to every dollar that an American produces, Canadians only produce 60 cents. And so Canada should simply, roll over and become American? Or should we all do that? Right? Like, when does it end? Right? Maybe Scotland and fucking Finland and England should be American because America is superior. Like, just because you think that one country is superior over another doesn't mean that they're able to absorb it into their country, right? Phil says, if China wants the best for Taiwan, acknowledge they're an independent country and feck off, mate. That would be nice. I think a lot of Taiwanese people would really appreciate that. Won't happen. Irene says, if China is good enough, why do they continue talking about violence to conquer Taiwan, which doesn't make sense? Irene, good point. Yeah, and that's kind of my point too. Canadian per vote subsidy ended in 2015. Okay, yeah, good. Thank you, Marco, for telling me that. Vincent says, use China shit. Oh, God, I'm flying through this. Ken S says, $5 again. Thank you very much, Ken. You can't reunite China and Taiwan. They have never been governed by the Chinese CCP government. Japan has governed Taiwan, but the CCP has not. Yeah, and that's a common, again, thank you so much for the super chat. I really, really, really appreciate it. And that is a common argument that people make here, is that, because I guess you'd have to talk about what, like the continuation of the country of China. Did it end when the Qing dynasty fell and then continued when the nationalists came and then ended and then continued when the communists came? Or would you consider all of that China? That's a really complicated thing to talk about right now, but I think what Chinese people say when they want to reunify Taiwan with the rest, they're talking about the Qing dynasty, which in their minds was still China. So, and I'm not justifying it. I'm not playing devil's advocate or advocating that it should be reunified or anything like that. I'm just trying to maybe explain the nuances to that. But thank you for the super chat, and good point. Irene says, and if those deported spouses thought China was so good, why do they take their kids back to China together, then keep their kids in Taiwan? I didn't realize they took their kids with them, but I suppose that makes sense. And then did their spouse stay in Taiwan? I didn't get that far in the article. I wonder if like their Taiwanese spouse stayed here. Phil says Dick Mountain, and yes, that is the one. Phil proving himself a long-time viewer. Rohan, my channel member, says, typical Chinese parent, I just want the best for you, and then lead their child all the way to hell. Lucas says, yes, I left it at Uptowner, and he should pick it up the same day. For anyone else in the chat, if you live close to Uptowner, you might get a free roadcaster if you go there tomorrow. No, Lucas, don't do it. Don't you dare. Alan says Dion loved the disco secretly. I think Alan might be a bit behind in the stream. Daniel says, I think that's just something built to look good for no other way, any reason at all. Things just for prestige. Garcia and Smith, China only wants what's best for Taiwan. That's the most arrogant statement in the world because it implies that China knows better than Taiwan and how to run things properly without asking Taiwan. Yeah. I will allow Carl to argue that point. I feel bad. I don't want everyone to like gang up on Carl. That's not really fair, is it? Phil says, I think Carl's comments are being filtered for me. I'm not, by the way, I have no moderators aside from like YouTube's native ones. I haven't blocked anyone. I haven't stopped anyone from commenting. I haven't done anything like that, which is why you're seeing people with very different political ideas here. I haven't censored anyone from discussing this. So if he's not commenting, it's not because of me. It's either because he doesn't want to or some other reason. This is interesting. I wonder like how many other YouTubers live stream an open political debate between China and Taiwan. This could be my new thing, you know, like invite a bunch of Wu Maos over to argue with you guys, because I don't think very many people would get this chance in like in real time. For me too, I can't see what he says. Really? I can see what he says. Is it being blocked? Let me check. When he says it can't see what he says, what it means? Does it say like it's redacted? Or just nothing shows up? Brian Smith says, hi, Praz. What's up, buddy? Long time no see, man. Good to have you in the chat. Wagwa Bill says, Chinese poor people are ruled by Chinese rich people. The rich people need the poor to survive. The rich are not true communists. Yeah, I mean, China hasn't been a true communist state for some time, but I think more than just this, you know, the rich ruling the poor, which you can make that argument for like every country pretty much. I think what happens is that Chinese people will 吃苦, which means to eat bitter or to withstand hardships. They will, until it happens to them personally. So I think China will continue until something happens. So I won't say catastrophic, but deep enough to where it happens, where it affects people personally. And then China's going to have some real problems. You know, these economic bubbles, these issues they've been having, haven't really had too much of an effect on people personally yet. But once it does, I mean, that's how you get a new dynasty, by the way. Like if you look at the history of China, most dynasties last roughly 400 years. And that's usually the way they end up falling, is that something happens that affects the people on a personal level, and then they just get a big giant revolt, and then they install a new dynasty. And so you could make the guess, like if you were a fortune teller, you could say that the communists have, 400 years before they fall and a new dynasty would take over. Irene Diaz, the CCP, claimed that they are the successor to the Qing dynasty, but they are not willing to acknowledge those deals made at the end of the Qing dynasty to compensate the other country's losses. I don't know much about that. Prazi, why do you consider moving to Kaohsiung from Taichung? I think I missed the part where you talked about it. I like Kaohsiung because it's got a lot going on. It's a vibey place, it's got a beach, it's got some cool nightlife areas. I like that the mountains are right next door. There's more places to go out. Well, there were, not so much anymore. I think Kaohsiung's got a cool little vibe. It's very relaxed, people there are very relaxed. But then so is Taichung. And so lately, I've been noticing that there isn't so much of a huge difference between Taichung and Kaohsiung. And I hate moving, and so that's why I haven't moved. It's such a pain in the ass. And my friends are in Taiwan, you know. Phil says, "Is YouTube? Some of my comments were filtered out too. I think that's so weird. I wonder if there's a way that I can, like, because I would like it that your comments can just show up. But I think before I did the live stream, I don't have access to that feature. I think before I opened the live stream, maybe there was an option for me to for YouTube to decide like how the comments are filtered. But I'm personally, I am not filtering any comments. Oh, okie. No comments at all. Nothing shows. Someone might go, why aren't these comments showing up? Okay, Carl Wagner replies. Now, Carl, people are saying they cannot see your comments. So I will read them aloud so that people know what you're saying. China is a superpower and a world leader in many fields, even when it comes to human... Oh, fuck me, Carl, come on. Even when it comes to human rights and equality, China is superior nowadays. It is arrogant to think Taiwan can be independent. That is... Oh, God, Carl. Carl, I don't even... I have a funny feeling the chat is going to have a lot to say about that, and I'm not even going to get a chance. Before I get into that, Carl, Kenichi S, $2 Australian says, I predict China will have future problems soon. Tough to say, you know. A lot of people have been predicting that. If you go on YouTube and you look at the complete financial, economic, whatever, collapse of China and its impendingness, there's so many videos of that go back years, and it hasn't happened yet. So it's difficult to predict, particularly because no one has a good idea of how Chinese economics... I mean, they know how it works. I mean, the numbers themselves. No one really has access to that. And so it's very difficult to know how China is actually doing. And so that makes it difficult to although you could have said they'll have future problems. Maybe you meant not necessarily economically. And so there's that. But Jesus Christ, Carl, I feel you have to be trolling. You have to be trolling. There's no way you believe that. Even when it comes to human rights and equality, China is superior nowadays. To who? Superior to who? Because I think if you ask the Uyghurs in Xinjiang province about human rights in China, you might not, I don't know, you might get a different answer. And why is it arrogant to think that Taiwan can be independent? Why? I'll let the chat catch up with that. Interesting point, though, Carl. I'm surprised that you think that's a defensible point. I'd be interested to understand you and why you think this way. Very interesting. Is the chat showing up now? That might have been me. I might have pressed the wrong button. No comments at all. Nothing shows. Was that me? Did I fuck that up? I think I filtered it properly. Not properly. Yeah, that was me. How long ago was that HTTs? I don't know. God, 10 years ago. Jesus. Have you heard about 2758? New Kaohsiung has better infrastructure, though. Could certain phrases or keywords be filtered on political topics? Maybe. Someone says, who are you? Prazi, nice to meet you. Carl Wagner equals Wu Mao. Yeah, Carl is a tool, literally, of the CCP. Carl is a Wu Mao or a tanky that got paid a lot to sound that dumb. Carl says he lives in Europe and he's not a Wu Mao. And I let's give Carl some respect and argue his points, you know, because I think there's a lot of like dehumanizing that goes on both sides of the argument, where it's easy to just tell someone, you know, that they are a Wumao or a Chinese shill or whatever, and then not have to argue any of their points. So I think in the spirit of debate, listen to what Carl is saying and debate it. I don't agree with Carl at all. But just, you know, calling him a Wumao doesn't do anything. Kenichi says, yeah, Chinese numbers are vague. Yeah, especially economically. Zach says, maybe he's just trolling you, getting you to read it out loud, kind of like Ron Burgundy sort of thing. Maybe, I don't know. But maybe not. Like, I'm sure there are people who genuinely believe this. Like, it could be the case that Carl Wagner actually believes these things. You know, it's not outside the realm of possibility. Phil says, are you Richard from England? They lied about their official numbers a lot. Oh, sorry, I missed Kenichi S's super chat. $2 Australian. Much appreciated. Thank you, Chetia. China is superior to 1950 China. Yeah, agree. Yeah, I mean, 1950s China is not, Jesus Christ. Can you imagine if you were born, you know, you come out of your mom, you open your eyes, the year is 1950 and you're Chinese? Fuck. Actually, if you were born in 1950, it wouldn't be that bad. If you were born like 20 years before that, or even any time 200 years in the past up until that point would be pretty awful. Not a fun place to be, China in the 50s. Carl is just trolling at this point. That makes absolutely no sense. There's an option in YouTube app, the settings, live streams hold for review. Yeah, but I can't, I don't think I can change the settings while I'm currently streaming. I think I have to do that before I stream. So maybe next time I'll have a look at that. Garcian Smith says, just like Twitch, YouTube has hidden blacklist of words and phrases that just get blanked out of existence sometimes. Yeah, which is so weird. Carl Wagner, again, Carl, thank you for your super chat. Everybody ready? Garcian says he's trolling because he's just making blanket statements. Notice how Carl is not specifying anything. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to get across to Carl. I want you to be more specific in your points so that, because it doesn't always make sense. Okay, but Carl has a new super chat. Thank you, Carl. I very much appreciate that. And here's what Carl has to say. China is far in all capital letters. China is far better than their reputation. You just live in anti-China filter bubbles. Think about it. China's future is prosperous, and Taiwan can take part. Okay, I think that China, because these things are complicated, and because it depends on which part of China are you talking about, it really depends. But I can see your point. That it's better than its reputation. Like, I think I've met some people who think that China is this weird dystopian communist, like Soviet era, everyone's poor, you know, whatever. Like, they have this idea, and oftentimes it's not that. I mean, it is that sometimes, you know, like to assume that the government isn't watching you and it's not dystopian is also wrong. But I suppose daily life, because again, Carl, I lived there for a long time. I lived there for 4 years. And so it's not like I don't know what it's like. It's not like I don't understand that. There's a reason I live in Taiwan. There's a reason I left China. And they lived up to their reputation, you know, when I left. When I lived there, and I didn't criticize China too heavily. I did almost in jest, But I was associated with a lot of people who ended up making videos that got quite a bit of attention, and they weren't even negative, but at that time in China, it was a really weird time. And so I was getting stopped at the border constantly. And so I know what it's like. It's not like I understand what you mean when you say I live in an anti-China filter, because I live in Taiwan, which is quite clearly anti-China. Obviously, I'm sure you can understand that. But it's not like I don't know what China is like. I do. And here's the thing as well. When you say something like China's future is prosperous, I hope China's future is prosperous. I don't think it helps anyone if the Chinese economy collapsed. I don't think that Western countries should be looking forward to that as well. Because a point I hope that Carl and I can agree on is that we don't want war, right? And one of the things that can happen if the Chinese economy collapses is that China will then use that as an excuse to take Taiwan with the military to try and distract from the economic hardships that the country might be going through. Or, for example, if Xi Jinping wants to be the one to reunify Taiwan, because I think before him, it was Mao and he took Tibet, and then Deng Xiaoping took, or was it Deng Xiaoping that took Tibet? Fuck me, my history. Well, at least Deng Xiaoping began the transition of Hong Kong and Macau, and this was a big reunification of the CCP, and then Xi Jinping can be the one to reunify Taiwan. So there's all kinds of, so I hope that China is prosperous, but I also hope that China can accept that Taiwan can be a free and independent country. And my question to you, Carl, would be, why do you think that Taiwan has to take part in that? Why do you think that Taiwan has to be a part of China, and why can't they be left alone? Why is that an unacceptable idea to you? Phil says Richard from England is a Chinese ad for black garlic or something, and the dude sounds obviously Eastern European. I saw it on ADV China. Oh, okay, I must have missed that then. Vincent Yu says they just stupidly make bad reputation for China. Wagwell Bill says I saw. Because I really wasn't prepared for this whole debate. I should come prepared next time. Wagwell Bill says, I saw that the KMT started as the Shanghai Mafia before they too over from the Qing dynasty. I don't think they started as the Shanghai Mafia. They were started I mean, they were horribly corrupt. So I guess that's probably why maybe the mafia was thrown around, but no. Anonymous 527 says, go Carl. If you send more money, we might actually believe you. Yes, Carl. I need money to buy Australia and to pay Lucas for his broadcaster. Phil says, the shit Chinese propaganda is so obvious and bad. I'm never going to believe anything you say again. And that's the other thing, Carl. Because a lot of the things that you're saying are repetitions of what the Chinese talking points are, to people who are listening to you, it sounds like you're not actually saying anything, because I could just replace you with someone else from China and they would say the same thing. And so there's no individual thought to it. What I mean by that is, it's not your thought. It isn't something that you thought of. It's not something that, perhaps it's something you believe, but it's not something, it doesn't sound like it's coming from you, if that makes sense. If I could just replace Carl Wagner with someone else who has going to have the exact same idea, then it's not really you that's saying it, if that makes any sense. I hope I'm making sense. I hope I'm not making a fucking ass of myself here. I'm sure, because it's relatively easy to disprove or say that Carl is wrong, but I'm trying to hear the guy out, and that makes it a lot more difficult. So yeah, something random says Carl Wagner should go live in China, and some foreigners do. Some people do love it, and
live there. Garcia Smith, Carl is throwing accusations, yet still has not specified how China is superior. Again, another blanket statement, waiting to see the specifics. I mean, he specified a little bit by saying, what? Human rights. And what was the other thing he said? Where is that comment? I can't find it now, but human rights and something else rather. So he specified a little bit, but again, that's still too general. Because whose human rights? And then also, what do human rights mean to you, Carl? You know? Zach says, I think it falls between rose-tinted glasses, the innovation and the fast-paced things to just get it done, and the cyberpunk dystopia. I mean, sure, you know, but you do have to admit some of the stuff that China is doing and the speed they're doing is impressive. But yeah, have you heard of 战狼外交? What does that mean? Wolf diplomacy. I have heard of it. Might talk about that on the next stream, because I'd have to read up about it before I really talk about it in detail, Vincent, but thank you for the comment. Zach says, I think it falls between, oh, sorry, I read that one. Irene, if China is that prosperous, how come they use the excuse to ask individual entrepreneurs to share their welfare? Okay. Wagwa Bill says, China is far better if you are one of the little princes or the Hong Er show. Yeah. Or Fuar Dai, maybe. Prospectives with NALO. China is better than their reputation because China is not the CCP. Unfortunately, right now, the CCP controls everything and the party must be number one. Sorry, my camera focus is going nuts. I think Western people often really like to make a separation between the government and the people because it makes us feel better about saying that, you know, people like to say things like, well, I don't like the Chinese government, but I have no problem with the people. But you can't really have your cake and eat it too in that sense. Unfortunately, the party is the people, and the people feel that as well. They have a hard time separating themselves from the government. Until, you know, like I said earlier, until something very, very bad happens, then of course they'll suddenly, you know, suddenly you no longer have the right to govern the country. But there isn't this separation of the individual and the country. And that's why it's very difficult to hurt Chinese people's feelings and have a cascading effect, right? For example, if I said something negative about a Chinese person, if I said this person in China was, I don't know, let's just choose something trivial, like they eat really loudly in public. You're not just insulting that single Chinese person, you've insulted the whole country. It has this cascading effect, and it's part of the reason why they have sort of glass hearts. And so yeah. Copper Newt says he's just regurgitating Chinese propaganda at this point, which is true. But I do like that he's paying me for it. I'm kidding. China and human rights, yikes. Oh yeah, Wolf Warrior diplomacy. ADV boys have talked about that. The name comes from a shitty Chinese movie called Wolf Warrior or something, which I saw, I think. I think me and Simok saw it in theaters together or something and just laughed our asses off at it. That was so long ago. Waiguo Bill says, good night. Hi, Taiwan. Thanks, Prazi, Jiao. Waiguo Bill, thank you so much for sticking around. Good night, man. Carl Wagner. Back. Okay, in China, corruption went to almost zero. Human rights problems, almost zero. They have a calm and smart leader. Taiwan has corruption problems. They give TSMC to USA, and Taiwanese people are not respected by their government. China respects all its citizens. Carl, you have a really... I have to ask you, Carl, if you've ever been to China.
the corruption in China did not go to zero. To your point, Xi Jinping ran a very stringent anti-corruption campaign. The problem with that, and okay, and then so you could argue that it reduced the corruption. Now, to reduce it to zero is a bit of an extreme statement. The problem with that, though, is that he used that anti-corruption campaign to basically delete any political rivals that he could have. And so that makes him the head of state on every level of government, right? He's the chairman, he's the president, he's the head of the armed forces, and all these other things. So it's more nuanced than that. It's more complicated than that. To say he's a calm and smart leader, he's certainly calm, and I would say he's smart too. I don't think you get to be the chairman of the Communist Party of China by being an idiot. So fine, I'll give you that. Human rights problems almost zero is a ridiculous statement. That's just not true. Try to protest. And again, that's why I asked you, what is a human right in your opinion, right? Do you believe that protesting is a human right? Do you think that voting is a human right? And then Taiwan has corruption problems, and you're right, Carl. Taiwan does have a lot of corruption problems. They give TSMC to the USA, and Taiwanese people are not respected by their government. I just don't know what you mean by that. TSMC is its own company, and so if they want to go and expand into the USA, they can. And then also, you said that poverty, there's no real poverty in China. What the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? Unless you're confusing the rise of the middle class in China, whatever that means, with no real poverty, or if you're confusing the fact that China has lifted so many people out of poverty, maybe you're getting that confused. But to say that there's no real poverty in China is ridiculous. I'll ask you this, Carl. Have you ever been to China? That was my initial question. And have you ever, okay, so you lived in China for 2 years. I was working closely with the government and gained insights. Carl, you're trolling, right? You have to be trolling here. Respects all its citizens. What about people with special needs? Do you think those people are treated with respect in China? I can tell you right now, with 4 years of living in China, excuse me, they are not. And you could argue that maybe people in special needs with China are maybe that's not a good argument because there's not enough of them to say that Taiwan, that the Chinese government respects all its citizens. But again, it was you, the one who said that they respect all of their citizens. So if you're going to make a sweeping statement like that, then it means all citizens. And I just simply don't think that that's true. Kenichi S has a $5 super chat. Thank you. China eliminated enemies of Xi Jinping. Well, I think Xi Jinping eliminated the enemies of Xi Jinping. Carl clearly has never been to China and can't speak Chinese. He says he's lived in China for 2 years and worked for the government. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but we'll have to take his word. And what do you mean by Taiwanese people are not respected by its government? And you can make that argument. I'm sure there's probably even Taiwanese people that would maybe even agree with you. China is the best human rights around the world. Human rights in China are 5 times better than the United States. Thank you, AA. Where are you getting these numbers from? This is wild. And I'm also starting to see signs that this is just like either trolling or straight up CCP propagandists, because it's too troll-like. And I'm wondering how entertaining this is for my chat. I got 93 people watching right now, and a bunch of them are in the comments. It's just very interesting to see. No real poverty if you don't count the... Shit, the chat's moving too quickly. No real poverty if you don't count the people in poverty as people. Stephen Blay. I want to read his comment because he's a channel member. Carl is a Chinese AA bot. AI bot. They make the best. Do you reckon? How cool would that be if we were all fooled? But I don't think he's an AI bot because he did a super chat. Would an AI give me a super chat? I think Carl's probably a real person. Garcia Smith says, this Carl person is being intentionally vague with his responses. It's a tactic, not a belief he's performing. Well, that's fine. I mean, even if it's a tactic and it's not something he truly believes, let's say it's a performance, maybe it's an interesting thought experiment. Like, because I think it's important for people who, whether or not you support Taiwan or China, I think it's important to like lay out your thoughts so that you get a better understanding of why you think the things that you think, right? Like, it's easy to say, I support Taiwan, I support freedom, I support democracy, I support free speech, the right to vote, yada, 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 yada. But you have to talk about like why, you know? And I think laying out these arguments is interesting. Kenichi S, $2 Australian. Thank you, Kenichi. You're the man. At this point, Carl is a troll or a Wu Mao. Okay. But does that mean that we don't want to engage with him anymore? I find it kind of interesting. Or do you guys think it's like... Because I also don't want to fall into this trap of like, oh, Carl Wagner is saying these outrageous things. They're so crazy that we're going to dismiss him completely, dehumanize him. He's AI, not worth talking to. You know what I mean? Just because he has such wildly different political ideas. Or they're not even political ideas, because just like Garcia, and I apologize, I'm not saying your name right, just like he's saying, he's so vague. But he's back. Carl Wagner says, where does China not respect disabled people? They have plenty of problems to support them. More than Taiwan and more than the USA. Look at the streets of the USA, full of homeless and poor people. Where does China... Okay, your first question, where does China not respect disabled people? Well, it's on a social level, Carl. I'll tell you a story. When I was living in China, I had a girlfriend, and I went to her place for dinner. And we all sat around the table and began eating. And I had noticed that her aunt was sitting by herself at her own table by herself. And her aunt was rather quiet. And, you know, my girlfriend's family was very friendly and nice and open to chat with me and excited to share food, you know, as typically Chinese people are. And at first I thought her aunt was sat at that other table because I was now at the table, and so there wasn't enough space, and so she sat, like maybe I was sitting in her place, and so she went to go sit somewhere because I was in her place. That's what I thought. And so I asked my girlfriend, I was like, hey, like, why doesn't your aunt come and eat with us? And she was like, oh, that she has a... God, I can't remember what she said in English. She had said something like she has problems with her brain and we don't talk to her. Just, she has her own special table. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. That's different. And not that bad, I suppose. I mean, it's bad, but it's not like crazy. They weren't abusing her. But then I found out later that, because after dinner we went out and she wouldn't come out. And I'm like, is your aunt going to come out? Like, it's nice out. And they do not let her leave the house. Ever. And the reason for that is because it's considered a sort of a social stain on your family to have that, right? If she were to go out in public and cause some kind of issue, it brings a loss of face upon the family. And so they kind of explain it to me as almost an act of love to keep them inside, to keep them indoors. I mean, go to China and try to find people with Down syndrome. I couldn't find any in 4 years I was there. I don't remember seeing one. Most people with special needs, particularly if it's a very noticeable one with a physical disability, or if it's a mental disability that manifests itself in a way that the public can easily see it, those people are not out in public. And I just don't see how that's respecting all people, at least in my opinion. So That's where they don't respect disabled people, Carl. And there's no government support for these people either. I don't know where you would get that from. They have plenty of problems to support them. That doesn't make any sense. More than Taiwan and more than the USA. I just don't think that's true. Your title attracts the China brats, Prazi. Ah, Excalibur Trekker. You might be their eye is younger and beautiful. Excalibur Trekker might have a point. Me and Seamilk were talking about plenty of programs. Yeah. I was talking to Seamilk and Winston about this, and they're convinced that YouTube is promoting pro-China videos, and I wonder if this is part of it. That'd be so interesting. Irene says, work with the CCP government doesn't mean that you know the facts of China. CCP will only bring the preventative or what they want to see the site. They want you, they only want you to see what you're supposed to see is basically what she's saying. Prazi, have your own opinion. I do have my own opinion. I've expressed my opinion, I think, relatively clearly. Copperner, Carl, do you agree with the Empire when you're watching Star Wars? Carl Wagner is obviously a real person with perfect logic. And that's Double A saying that, who's been relatively pro-China. Carl is distracting you from the real topic. Maybe. What's the real topic? Is it bad that I'm engaging him on a serious level? Like, do you think that that's more damaging than just ignoring him? I'm interested in this. Carl, I lived in China for 2 years, living in a first-tier city, working for the government. He knows the real truth, guys. Yeah, Phil brings up a good point, too. Like, if you lived in, like, Shanghai for 2 years, and you're like, I know China, it's like, you fucking... Shanghai is so different from the rest of China. The essence of his arguments are sound, says Aldrich Epson. Imagine sending your kids to school in the USA and not knowing if they'll come home. Chinese people have freedom from gun violence, freedom from many bad things. But that's not true, though, because you could also send your child to a school in China. It doesn't mean they're not going to get stabbed to death, because that happens very frequently. It's just because they don't have gun violence in schools doesn't mean they don't have violence in schools. It's just a different kind of violence. You can look up all kinds of articles on knife violence in schools, tragic stuff. Hospitals as well. So they're not safe from guns. Well, I suppose you could say they're safe from guns, but they're not safe from violence. That's a ridiculously naive thing to say. Kenichi S, $2 Australian. Yo, Prazi, what's your favorite Zelda game? Fuck me, good question. That is the real topic. Carl Wagner was distracting me from Zelda. Fuck. When I grew up, I played a lot of Ocarina of Time, but I really like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom as well. Although I haven't played my Switch in a while. Garcia Smith says the difference is you, Prazi, are looking for resolutions to these questions, yet he is not. Yet he is not. That's what makes it trolling. Yeah, but it's also not fair. Like, I know what you mean, but it's also not fair to Carl, because I can just speak, right? So I'm faster and he has to type. So I think maybe the conversation is going a little bit too fast for him to actually like have a good point. So maybe that's not really fair. Stephen Blake, we are able to criticize our own countries. I'm British, we have our share. But I find it impossible for a Chinese person to point out even the smallest of faults with China. Carl? And good question, Stephen, and I would happen to agree with you. I think it's very difficult for Chinese people to openly admit that there's something wrong with China. Carl Wagner says, it's the same in other countries. 1% of people have Down syndrome. How many do you see in the streets? 1 in 100? No, far less. You think it's bad in China, but same problems and worse in Taiwan. No, I'm not saying that I only saw a few people I mean, I saw like none. Because they get locked up and they stay at home, or they just get aborted, right? Particularly at the time that I lived there, because this has since changed now, but China had a one-child policy. And so parents would make damn sure that the one child that they were allowed to have, talking about human rights, by the way, Carl, the one child they were allowed to have, they wanted to be damn sure that it was going to be a healthy kid. And so if they have a child that has Down syndrome, what do you think is going to happen? I'll tell you guys another crazy story. Before I do, though, Kenichi, $2 again, Tears of the Kingdom, and Oot, great choice, bro. Cheers. Me and Kenichi have very similar tastes. Let me tell you another story about human rights. And you could debate whether this is human rights or not, but I have a close Chinese friend of mine whose parents desperately wanted to have a boy. There's a myriad of reasons why you'd want a boy. Rohan Y, 150 NT, thank you. Same thing happened to when they found out the baby was a girl. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm getting to. There's all kinds of reasons why Chinese people want a boy. If your son gets married, you get to live with him and his wife, and you're taken care of in old age. If you have a girl, the girl gets married to a guy, and you're left on your own and no one to take care of you. Okay. And there's all kinds of like socioeconomic reasons, but her parents desperately wanted a boy, and they simply couldn't. They kept having girls. And so my friend had, I want to say 2 sisters, which you weren't allowed to do in the early 90s in China. And so her 2 sisters are not registered as people. I mean, of course they're people, but they're not registered because they can't be, because that would mean that her parents would have to pay a really heavy fine. So how's that for human rights? On top of that, in order to have a boy, they kept trying to have kids, but kept having girls. And so the baby would be born. It would end up being a girl. And without getting too graphic, it would be a bit of a late abortion. And she would tell me stories. And again, okay, you could argue this is anecdotal and not true, but why would she be telling? There's no reason she would lie about this, about her mother being rather traumatized about the sort of hospital box that they would put these babies into because it was happening so frequently. And stories like this permeate throughout Chinese culture and Chinese history. And my friend's mother, who's a lovely woman, she is a lovely woman despite this insane story. At least when I met her, is in horrible health because of the amount of abortions that she had. And you could argue that it's not, I like to think that it's not entirely her fault because of the amount of societal pressure that was put on her to have a boy, especially in the early 90s. But it is anecdotal stories like that, stories that I've heard and people that I've met and things that I've seen is why I look at your comments, Carl, and call them a bit ridiculous and unfounded. And yeah, I mean, just imagine like you're in China and there was like, this hospital just has a box full of babies that get thrown in there. Because they make it a deeply impersonal experience, right? Because you don't want to have a girl see your baby and get emotionally attached to it just to have it thrown in the bin, essentially. And so they would essentially you would have the baby, they would take it immediately and dispose of it, which is wild. And so you could, some people might ask, well, why wouldn't they do an X-ray, an ultrasound to determine the sex of the child before getting rid of it? Those are illegal. You aren't allowed to know the gender of your baby before they're born. The hope is to stop these types of abortions from happening. Now, of course, if you have enough money, you can pay a doctor and they'll tell you what it is. I remember we did that when Simok and Vivi did that when Olivia was born. They had an ultrasound done because Vivi's family knew someone in the doctor, whatever. So yeah, stories like that are fucking insane. And so when you say that China has an impeccable human rights record and there's no corruption and everything is perfect, I mean, come on. Yeah. Carl says, children with severe disabilities get aborted everywhere. Are you still against abortion in general? And you complain about less freedom in China? Law? I don't think they get aborted everywhere. I don't think that they do. I could be wrong, but just because, okay, Carl, just because they get aborted everywhere, does that then make it not wrong? It's still fucked up, isn't it? Just because it happens everywhere. That's still fucked up. I'm saying the scale at which it happens in China is insane and beyond. It's not a fucking competition, but like, it's insane. And are you against abortion in general? That's a whole fucking can of worms I don't want to open. I think most people will be against abortion if the idea behind the abortion is just the fact that it's going to be a girl, right? Like, I think that when people say they want to have an abortion, it's for more serious reasons, like economic reasons, or health reasons. It's not because the baby's a fucking girl. That's a wild statement to make, Carl. What the fuck? And Phil says that's why there's a demographic problem now. Yeah. And in Taiwan, we have a preference for having sons here, and it still exists in some families, and they do. And that's true. Taiwan does have a preference for having sons, but there is no one-child policy in Taiwan, and therefore parents can just keep trying if they like. And there's no reason to abort your kid. Garcian Smith is not sure if you're familiar with the tactic Carl is using. Ooh, Garcian's going all in on this. It's a form of trolling called sea lioning. Go do a quick lookup of what it is. It's very pertinent to the conversation at hand. Should we run that as a social experiment? I'll keep the stream going for a little while. Like, the amount of people watching hasn't really dipped very much. So it seems you guys are enjoying it. Sea lioning example. Let's see. Let's compare this to what Carl is doing, and we'll find out. Sea lioning is a form of internet trolling where someone persistently asks for evidence or justification for claims, often without genuine interest or understanding. Okay, it's characterized by a pretense of civility and curiosity, while the questions are actually designed to harass and derail the conversation. Okay. Interesting. I don't know. I mean, I sort of feel like sea lioning is so vague. You could use that so easily against so many different people that have a different opinion than you. See, Carl, now look at what you've made Prozzy talk about. Can we just talk about motorbikes now? Yeah, this used to be a fun chat, guys. I used to talk about buying Australia and making everyone in Australia my sons and daughters. And now we have to talk about this super deep, dark part of China. And I don't talk about these things on my channel all that often. And maybe I should, because I think it's worth knowing, you know, these stories. I think I never got around to filming it because I think it would just sound like hearsay unless my Chinese friend was in the video talking about it, and she would never agree to something like that. So I just, you know, I don't want to tell a story like that and not have hard proof, you know, without having a firsthand, you know, a Chinese person actually talking about it. So I never made that video. You got sea lion, Prozzy. Learned a new term today. I don't think I did. I think, in any case, like, I can see how I'm sea lining Carl. I don't think it's true with this box. Why do people make up such horrible stories? Yeah, Carl. Well, unfortunately, that's what happens, man. And if you live there for longer and if you spoke to people, maybe you would learn these things do happen, and China's not a perfect place. And it has lots of problems and horrible human rights records. And despite your claim that their human rights records are better now, it doesn't mean that they should be forgiven for all the stuff that they've done for the past, you know? And you haven't changed my mind that Taiwan can be left alone and be an independent country and can be separate from China. I think that both countries can exist at the same time. Because you have to remember, it's not Taiwan that's calling for the destruction of China. It's the other way around. And so you have to ask yourself, Carl, which side of the coin do you want to be on? Which side of the argument do you want to be on? The aggressor or the defender? You know, are you the kind of person, Carl, who blames Ukraine for the war? You know? Am I back? All right. Sorry. 12 people left. That's pretty much everyone. God damn it. I don't know what's going on. I think something's happening where the page builds up so much cache data and then it stops. I'm not really sure what's going on. Yeah. I don't know. People were saying that I cut out far before the computer told me I did. Where was I? Was I reading Kenichi's super chat? Yeah, cars are crazy, crazy expensive in Taiwan. I think that's where I left off. And Carl had a hilarious banger. He said the internet in China is better than Taiwan. You have to hand it to him. That's pretty funny. Okay, I'm back. I have friends working for one in Shenzhen, highly productive people. It's not all about USA. Yeah. Yeah, Kenichi, do you really have an A86 Torino? Because that's fucking crazy. Yeah, that's insane. I would love to just sit in one of those cars. Kevin says, but I have a question. Why do people not think that Taiwan deporting warmongering Chinese just the same thing as other countries does with people with terrorist behaviors? Yeah, I mean, we talked about that. Man, I've been streaming for almost 4 hours. We talked about that in the beginning of the video. Like I drew parallels to Germany, where there's lots of things you can't say or do in Germany. So, you know, because how much influence do you want people to have, right? There's already some people in Taiwan who think on similar lines to Carl, actually. And the more you have these influencers online talking about these things, it definitely challenges national security. National security and social stability as well are something you have to think about from the government standpoint. But then, you know, these freedom of speech topics can get really complicated, and because then you have to ask the question, how much power do you want to give the government and all of that? But, you know, Carl says in Germany, it takes 20 years to build an airport. In China, it takes 1 year or less. That's true. It takes a long fucking time for shit to get built in the West. I can't deny that. Rohan Y says, that's exactly how I see it, but I get some people in Taiwan just have to use that divide to divide the society. See what happens in Thailand. Yeah, Chinese tofu, Dreg, Carl. Yeah. Let's keep this stream going, guys, till to the 4 hour mark. That would be a milestone. I don't think I've ever streamed for 4 hours before. That was fun. I'm so thirsty. So let's get final discussions in. We got another 8 minutes to go. Do they have malatang in Taiwan? They do. And it's very good. Kenichi, yes, $5. Kenichi, the man of the hour. First it was Ken and now it's Kenichi. Or maybe are they the same goddamn people? Got a Trino and sold my AW11 MR2. Oh. Cars are expensive in Taiwan, but you think about getting an 8.6 in Taiwan? A86 too expensive, so I'm thinking of an 8.6. I mean, I think because I already had an 8.6 in Canada, I don't know that I would want another one. I got them when they first came out. I think it was the 2013 model years when they first came out. Maybe it was 2012, actually. and I really liked it. That model year had a lot of issues with the oil pan. It would suck in the filter, or no, it wasn't the filter. It was the sealant that they use for the oil pan it would be brittle and it would break up, and then it would get sucked in through the oil pan and fucking blow your engine. I'm not sure if they I mean, they must have, because the 8.6 has been out for like over 10 years. So I'd be worried about getting another one. That's one thing I'm really jealous about Australia and New Zealand, is you guys get so many cool Japanese cars, and we never got them in Canada. So you never see older 8.6s in Canada, like the 8086, the Trano, that kind of thing. So I'm jealous. And you sold your AW11 MR2. What a fucking cool car. I'm surprised. You know, if I had, let me give you a comment of love here. If I had an MR2, I would wrap it around a tree like a gift so fast because it's mid-engine. And, you know, I've never driven a mid-engine car. I wonder like what the performance would be like with the way it is it oversteer that they have, or I think it's just like a pivoting issue, because it's such a weird setup, like a mid-engine car. Or is it a rear-engine car? Mid-engine, right? The MR2? Kenichi, same person, bro. Oh, fuck. It's the same goddamn person. Switching accounts or something, switching names. Cheers. While YouTubing and streaming is so different, the best algorithm for stream is actually 5 hours. Are you serious? I think I can stream for 5 hours if I knew I was going to stream for 5 hours and I could prepare. Kenichi again. Yeah, same guy. Changed my name to Kenichi, like on Patreon. Oh, okay, cool. Well, cheers. You don't have to keep super chatting me every time you want to. I mean, I appreciate it. It's really nice, but you don't have to keep doing that. It does make a huge difference, by the way. Lawrence Bilton, my channel member and a viewer of the podcast, says 1 year is perhaps too fast. He's talking about building an airport. It means that you have a government forcing through without due diligence or checks being made, which is true. You have a big issue with quality in China, especially when it comes to buildings. So good point, Lawrence. Carl says, I had an MRI done in China once. Now, okay, when Carl made the joke about the Chinese internet connection, I kind of thought he wasn't AI, because it's funny. But now he's saying, here's the thing, me and Kenichi, or Ken, I suppose I should call you, are talking about the Toyota MR2. And then Carl chimes in and says he had an MRI done in China. And so my argument is that if he was AI and he heard MR2 and couldn't make the connection to the car and instead went MRI. Had an MRI done in China once, got an appointment the next day. In Germany, wait time was 4 months. China is more productive in almost all fields. Well, Carl, I can get an MRI done in Taiwan in a day as well. So, you know, it's the same in Taiwan. MRI and MR2, weird, right? Isn't that weird? Should we all see if, oh, Kenichi's back. Another. Mid-engine is fun. You get used to it if you can drive an A86 or an 8.6 fast. Super chats for fun. I'm doing well in life, bro. Happy to support good people. Ken, dude, that gave me chills, like when you said, I'm doing well in life. That's so fucking cool. I think in today's economy, or maybe it's just the people I have around me, you don't hear people say that very often, I'm doing well in life. And that's such a cool fucking thing to say. Like, it's so, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass just because you're giving me super chats. I genuinely mean that it's so rare for people to be able to look at themselves and say I'm doing well in life, because it's so often the case that when people are doing well in life, there's that next thing, you know, like there's more money to make, you know, maybe they make their first 10 grand and they're like, oh, I got to make my first 50. And then, oh, I got to make my first 100. And then I got to make my next, and they never stop to be able to look around and be like, you know what, I'm actually like doing well. That's fucking cool. And YouTube's a lot like that too with subscribers. Like you make your first 10,000 subscribers and then you think that's a lot because it's hard to do that. And then you get your first 50,000 and then you get your 100,000. And then now I'm at 150 something thousand. And it feels small, you know, because I'm looking at everyone else who has so much more. That's fucking cool. Yeah, I never really drove my 8.6 that fast, to be honest with you. One, because it's not a particularly fast car. And two, I don't enjoy high speed, I think, especially on public streets. That just scares me. But I did have fun with it, like in the rain, you know, get the rear out a little bit. And I was only like 20 when I had that car, or 22 or something. So I knew back then that I didn't possess the skills, you know, to like really take advantage of it. Such a cool car. I don't know if I could have any car in Taiwan, it would be an old, they used to be Datsuns and then they became like a Formosan something. It's like a Ute, right? You Australians call them Utes. It's fucking cool. I can't remember the model name. I have an MRI while on an MR2. Yeah. Yeah, I think Carl said he's German. Sorry, maybe I understood. It's a very AI thing of you to say, Carl. Banshee Prezi, you look like you are getting cooked. You all right, bro? I'm fine. I have neck problems. That's why that happens. Don't worry about it. Carl's channel is 10 years old and has 2 vids, so I guess he's not AI. Ah, Phil, go doing the deep dive. Yeah. Maybe he's not AI. Or maybe someone, maybe Carl Wagner sold his YouTube account to a Chinese AI company. Is that too far? Am I going too far down this rabbit hole? Guys, what a live stream. That was fun. But yeah, Prezi, just a heads up, like water and snacks would be super important. 5 hours typically brings the most traffic flow algorithm-wise for you. I didn't know that. I'll have to look into that, Kevin. Yeah, snacks I'll have to do. I haven't peed in 4 hours. Have you noticed that this whole stream? I mean, aside from getting cut off, which wasn't my fault, I sat here this whole time. I feel like that's impressive. I would love to buy a classic muscle car in Taiwan. You can't. I don't think there are any classic muscle cars in Taiwan. You can in Japan. A lot of like American GIs, I think, like imported a bunch of them, but you can't really do that here. I've modded for enough streamers to learn most of that. Yeah, that's crazy. So I got to wait 5 hours to get like proper. I don't know. I don't stream enough to like know the ins and outs, you know. I used to stream while walking around and then I would just end the stream when my battery died on my phone. But now I do it at my computer because I don't know. It's a little bit more stable, which is hilarious because obviously it's not that stable. And I find that it's easier to engage with you guys when I'm sat here at my computer rather than kind of like try and look at my phone, you know what I mean? But what a stream. That was fun. We started off with Chinese people getting deported. And then we had Tokyo Sam in the chat. We had Lucas in the chat. I can't even remember. It was 4 hours. Yeah. And now that I know what the tactic is, I shouldn't fall for sea lining. I don't mind the discussion, honestly. I think it's so fun to see these other ways of looking at things. And Carl with €2.49. Please remember China is not as bad as the media says. Carl, you know what? I think that's a fair way to end things. I don't think that's a ridiculous statement. You know, maybe China isn't as bad as the media says. And there's a fair point to be made about how China and lots of countries are made out to be worse than they are by the media. But yeah, it's been 4 hours. I really, really appreciate all of you guys being with me. It means the world. Ken, especially for all those super chats. Carl, thanks for being in the chat, man. You were, if you're real, you know, you went through it, and you weren't being nasty. Aside from advocating for war, which that's debatable. But guys, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll have a video ready for you next week. I promise. I'm going to be speaking Chinese. I got my book here. I'm going to take some lessons with AI, maybe from Carl. And I'm going to survive a day speaking only Chinese. I don't know if that's interesting enough. I hope it is. It's going to be fun. And other than that, I got a food tour video, which I hope people watch that. I don't know. We'll see. Ken coming back right at the end. Great stream, bro. Keep streaming more. Like I said, your strength is streaming and also keeping up with the chat. You're good at it, man. Thanks, Ken. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And hopefully I do more. I think my last one was like a month ago, and they are fun. And it's cool. I just don't want to like oversaturate you guys. You know what I mean? Like if I did them like super often, you guys would get bored with it. And I want to make sure I have something to say. But cheers, dude. I appreciate that. And all of your comments get a lot of uploads. So your last one just got 4 likes. So I'm assuming people agree. Den North says, proud of your Chinese accent is good. Thank you. Food tour? Is this Alan's channel? I know. Guys, I know. The food thing is overdone. I get it. But the reason I'm doing it is because I had my friends visit and we went to Tainan and Gloria took them. Me and Gloria took them to all these restaurants and they were saying how we should open up a food tour because they had so much fun. And I thought, well, why not make a video about a food tour in Taichung and make it kind of fun? And not even really make it about the food, you know, make it more about like the vibe, make it more about the atmosphere, make it more about like how much fun it is to go out and try different places. You know, but it's hard to get away from food because it's such a huge part of Taiwanese culture, excuse me. But yeah, so that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate you. Stay positive. Keep your stick on the ice. Catch you guys next week for another video. 谢谢大家。